Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3. What test 1? Testing 1 2 3. Okay, I think I'm louder than the music. Hey, internet, how's it going? We're gonna try a different setup here. We get this from back here. We get that over here. I think this. Where is? Hey everybody, how's it doing? It's Wednesday afternoon. I am Aaron, and I'm going to be streaming some React Native mobile development. Here on Twitch TV and the YouTubes, of course. Hopefully you can see my Xcode screen in front of me here. I am trying to got a new setup, a new monitor setup here. I'm trying out, and TBD Gamer, hey, how's it going? Yeah, it's been a couple months here. I've been out. I was out of the country for about a half a month, and then over in Europe, and then I came back and remodeled my kitchen, which took every moment of that's all right if you missed it. Took all the energies that I had to remodel the kitchen. It's still not done, but it's close enough where I can break out and do some good old coding now. This is actually wrong. This should say React Native. You can see where I borrowed that code from. Hopefully you can hear my audio and everything's good. My name's Aaron LeBeau. I'm a principal software engineer at Couchbase. We are a database company. We make databases. We make mobile databases. I am an expert at mobile development and mobile databases specifically. When I say expert, I play one on TV. Hydration break. Let's see here. I think we've got everything covered here. Let's see here. We need more light. Boy, that's almost too much light, isn't it? I've got, like I said, I got a new desktop setup, so I'm just trying to make sure. I think we're gonna go at 20% light right now. I think that's good. Well, what you been up to, TDB Gamer? Hopefully all good. I have been working. I wrote last month an Ionic plugin for Couchbase Lite. That I had to write some Swift and some Kotlin code, and I'm doing the same thing in React Native now. I find that Ionic was a little bit more modern, is the way to say it. It kind of supported all the greatness of Swift, and because of that, it was relatively simple to write. If anything, I'm actually going to say I enjoyed myself. It was actually a lot of fun. Ionic for web developers is, if you can take the understanding of performance in Android, it's not a bad solution if you're just a web developer and you're just looking to do a simple mobile app. Obviously, React Native is a totally different world here. It feels very old, is the way to say it. There's a lot of legacy in it. It doesn't support Swift objects. You have to use Object-C for everything, and so I am. You're about to be bored as I write a lot of data adapters to switch between Swift objects and Object-C objects. I've been building my project planning software on Stream, starting to get some traction with DevNow. Oh, still in my Angular world. There's no wrong with Angular, man. I had to write an Angular example app for Ionic, and I had to remember how Angular worked, and so I went back and did that, and that was fine. I've been using React for quite a while now, at work, both for mobile and for web-based stuff, and I'm kind of used to it. And once you get used to it, you start to preference it, right? It has nothing to do with is React better than Angular, because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. It's use whatever you know works. I would say that I think Angular is easy to troubleshoot performance problems, and I think React is really hard when you have complex performance problems. I think that's probably my biggest opinion on React. And at React Native, it's really, really hard. They don't, like in React on the web, you can basically just use the React tools and combination of your browser. You'll see like what components are re-rendering. In React Native, that's a lot harder to do. And so because of that, you when you do have performance in React Native, it's relatively tricky to try to figure out like how do I solve those problems. Not getting any music. What's going on here? Let's see here. So the problem if I turn the music up, then it's probably blasting me on. It's probably overwhelming me on Twitter. What can I do about this? Oh, yeah, turn up my headphones. That's the answer. Oh, okay, let me turn that back down. Let me turn that back down to where it was before. The music gets loud quick on Streamlabs. And let's go and I don't think that this is really the right music to be coding to. Let's go to see if I can find chill. I usually like the chill channel. That allows me to judge the volume a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I think that that's better now. I can hear it pretty well, and I'd have to get my iPad back up to see. Hopefully that's better for everybody. Also a little bit more relaxed music here as we kind of go through and do this. I should probably check. I've got my iPad right here. This is my favorite device of all time. This is the iPad mini. And let me tell you, I absolutely adore the iPad mini. I use it more than my cell phone because I'm old, pushing 50, and this thing is pretty great. It allows you to see things better because I got really bad eyesight as I get older. Yep, that's good. That's cool. Okay, there we go. All checked, and I think that the volume's okay. So let's see here. What do we got going on here? We got some Swift code going on here. What does this darn thing do? Well, it's a React Native plugin or module. They call them native modules. And so how it works is that there's a header here, a file, kind of a header file. And what it's doing is there's some macros in here. So that's why it's an M file. And these macros will map to this bridge right here. Okay, this header bridge. So what's going to happen is that it's going to do some magic here. And any method that I broadcast here, as long as I have Swift code to it, and I have a JavaScript method that matches that name, when I call the JavaScript method, it'll call the Swift method. That's the magic behind it. Now, where it kind of stinks is here, and a string all over the place. In Ionic land, you could just use regular Swift strings. But in React Native, very much specifically, their docs call this out in great detail that there's only certain data types that are supported, and you have to kind of make do with that. And let me get over my browser here so we can see what's going on here. Ooh, that's the wrong monitor. Let's get over to this monitor. You can see here, these are the data types that React Native supports on the box. So you can see on Object-C, we've got an NS string, bool, double, NS number, array, and dictionary. You're gonna probably spend most of your time sending things back in an NS dictionary. And your NS dictionary can only really have either objects or obviously one of these types in it. And they give you some warnings that you shouldn't be using like NS integer or CG float or even float because Turbo modules, which is the future version of React Native development, does not support it at all. I always keep the React Native docs open over here on my other monitor because they keep me honest when I'm coding. And that's kind of important because you need to understand your restrictions. So my problem is I've got a shared library I wrote right over here, the CBL.js Swift. And so for example, here in the database manager, all my code to kind of do database stuff is over here. And it's written with modern Swift, like any hash row versus a NS dictionary. And I'm using regular Swift strings. So how do I solve this problem where I already wrote a library that kind of uses modern Swift because that's what our friends over at Ionic were supporting. So it's like, man, I'm going to write this modern because I like modern Swift. I get Object-C, and I used to be a big fan of it, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I want to use Swift now. So how do I solve that? Well, I make a data adapter. The data adapter just basically converts Swift data over into, and it's Object-C objects into Swift. And it also will do all my data adaptering of converting the Swift objects back to something that I can send to the JavaScript framework. And so that's what my data adapter class is going to do. It's a good old data adapter. Think of this like a wall plug. If you go over to Europe and you're in the US, you have to get an adapter that allows you to adapt from AC power to DC power. My data adapter is going to do the same thing. It's a common pattern, I think, in software development. I've written them throughout the years. Back in the .NET days, you'd write a lot of data adapters for, what was it called? ADO.NET, Active Data Objects. So I've written quite a few of those. So let's see here. So I've got my ADOs, I've got my data adapter set up. I've got my React Native stuff going here. And where did I leave off? Let me see where I left off this morning. So I've got some scope functions done here. We can see here, this is getting a default scope. Make sure that's right. It's calling my database manager, my shared code with my argument, which I pull out of my data adapter. And then I basically get a dictionary from the data adapter that adapts the scope into a dictionary, and then I can return the dictionary. And then, of course, if I error out for some reason, I'm going to go through and throw some exceptions. Because it's Object-C, it's kind of weird. I have to do both these because sometimes it's an Object-C error that happens, and sometimes it's a Swift error that happens. So when I was just doing Swift, I couldn't get it. I was missing errors, and that sucked because then I was trying to debug, figure out what's going on. And then if I just did Object-C, I was missing some of the Swift errors. So I'm doing both, and it's weird that I have to do both. I'm not a big fan of that. I should probably just, there's no easy way to methodize this out to a single method either, that I could find. I mean, I guess I could, but it's really one line of code you're really saving here. So yeah, I'm not gonna, I should refactor this eventually to find a better way of doing this error handling. But for right now, for what I'm doing, it seems to be working in fine, and I don't want to shake the boat because I have so many other things I'm trying to get done, right? From a tech debt standpoint, it's something I should probably worry about eventually, but not today. All right, let's see here. So where is my plan list here? I got another screen out here that I've got my plan list of things that I need to write today. Let's see here. I've got all the collection code, I think, done. Let's go take a look at collections real quick and see. So I've got default, get collection, get collections, create collection, and delete collection. Okay, that all looks right. I think we have enough Swift code actually here where we could probably write some object or some React Native code, and you can see just how crazy this is, how to build a UI in React Native versus any other way of writing a UI. I guess I could do the indexes code real quick, but let's try some UI code real quick here because a lot of people like to see what the UI looks like, right? So here's this is my Ionic app. So I'm trying to match the Ionic app's look as much as I can to my React Native app. So it's got all kinds of crazy things here. I made some improvements in the React Native version of this, so it's not 100% the same because there's things I didn't like per se in the Ionic, and I kind of did it very quickly. It was very much a hack job put together, I would say. So with that understanding, I'm going to move this off to another screen here so that I have some screen real estate I can use. Let me find my, oh boy. Jeez, I put myself on, my wife's timing is absolutely terrible. Let me, do not disturb. Sorry about that, folks. Make sure I can answer her real quick. All right, let me, kill that. Sorry about that. And we're good there. All right, let's see here. My wife's my father-in-law is not in the world's best health, and so that's been an issue. She's checking up on him today. Let's see here. Well, oh, yeah, let's get over. So it's kind of interesting how this works. So if you're gonna do a build, or even just understand how this works, yeah, boy. I should show you this because this is like some high level crap here. So here's my code that's opened up in IntelliJ. I think I told everybody in the last stream I'm a big fan of IntelliJ. Not the world's biggest fan of VS Code. I know that that's not a popular opinion, and most people would be like, what, are you crazy? Probably a little bit. I mean, aren't we all just a little bit crazy? But in the world of React Native, JetBrains fan here. Oh, good. Yeah. Me too. I'm a big fan of JetBrains. I mean, obviously, I use Android Studio, but really, I use IntelliJ for almost everything. Android development, Flutter development, Ionic development. When I wrote the Ionic stuff, I did that. I'm obviously using it for React Native development. Which people go, wait, you can do that? It's like, yeah, I mean, React Native is mostly command line driven stuff. I mean, obviously it's a little tricky to get the debugger set up, but you can't technically speaking debug inside of JetBrains. Most of the time you're gonna wanna do that in Chrome though. That's the better place to debug. And then obviously your Swift code, you wanna debug over in Xcode, and your Android code, you'd wanna debug over in Android Studio or in IntelliJ, honestly. It has a decent experience for Android. But you have to open up the Android Gradle project in order for the debug to work. And so usually I use Android Studio for that. But I love the JetBrains. So what's going on with this? So in the world of Ionic, or boy, I'm gonna be all screwed up tonight. In the world of React Native, there's two ways to build a mobile app. There is the hard way. Oh yeah, Writer's great for .NET. I have that installed and use it for .NET. And I don't install WebStorm because I just use IntelliJ, and it does all the features that WebStorm have. I just install the same plugins that WebStorm provides, and then I don't have to have it installed. And I do install the Android stuff, so I have Logcat running here. You know, I could use the Android profile. I have all the Android stuff installed. I just I want to keep two windows open because I want to be able to debug, and I don't have to open the project separately. I just find that easier. But it's pretty cool. But in the world of React Native here, there's a big issue, and that's to understand modern React Native mobile app development. And so for that, I kind of mentioned this in the last stream, but I kind of wanted to get back into it. Let's see here. Are they gonna? Do I have the link open? I think it would be not in core components. Let's go to React Native. Get started. This is where they kind of explain to you that you can use React Native without a framework. However, if you're building a new app with React Native, they recommend using a framework. And the framework that's out there today, there's pretty much just one that leads the pack, and that's Expo. And so that's what they recommend here. And so even on the main React, getting started with React Native website, they're like, you know, dude, you gotta use Expo. Like, seriously. Like, I don't care who you are, you should be using Expo. Well, the problem with this is that the React native module, if you're writing a native module project, the example app is not Expo. So I had to go through the very long and way more complicated process than it needed to be to basically swap out the, boy, that's really loud, that music. To swap out the example app with Expo, which is what I wanted to do. You know, I want this to be something that the average React developer can look at and say, oh yeah, I understand that code, right? And if everybody's using Expo, I should probably do that too. Expo's got a lot of quality of life improvements in it. It's got navigation built into it. I'm changing the music here real quick here because I didn't like those tunes. It's got navigation built into it, which is really, really nice. And it's got some quality of life improvements on how the app gets set up. That's probably the good thing about Expo. The bad thing is, like, it's not designed for React Native module development. And so you have to really kind of get into the nuts and bolts of how everything works. And so some of these things I had to do is because of Expo. And what do you say these things I had to do? Well, one, Expo is designed where your iOS project is deleted and rebuilt every single time you clean. Now, you got to let that sink in for a second. Your iOS project and Android project both are just deleted. Oh, crap. Like, what about my CocoaPods and stuff? All deleted. Whoa. And you think about that for a second, you go, oh, man, well, how the hell do you do that then? That seems like, I mean, I have a plugin I'm trying to develop, right? Well, the answer is there's this React Native plugins file right here. It's what happens is it's in the Expo's documentation, right? I'm just going to give you a summary of it though. Is you're going to go through and override or get some options for how Expo builds. And you're going to get some pod file, X projects, and then you need Gradle for Android. And you're going to bring those in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to compile your code, your CocoaPod and all those kind of things in with this function. And so what happens is when Expo builds a new iOS project, it's going to call this code. In this code, you're going to generate a merge of their code with your CocoaPod spec file. By doing that, what happens is every single time it cleans, it goes through and generates a new CocoaPod spec file. And this thing is unreadable. I mean, it's nothing like you've ever seen before. Do not try to modify this thing because it just deletes it. Instead, you need to follow their SDK and how to write code to generate the CocoaPod spec file. And that sounds like it's a lot of work, and it's probably more than it needs to be. But honestly, if you look here, it's not a huge amount of code. Once you read the SDK, you kind of have an understanding of what they're cooking. I get it. Is it friendly to the iOS developer? No. Because if you look at this pod file, this thing just like makes no sense. So one, there's a bunch of environment variables it sets. And then you can see here, install CocoaPods. And then you look here, prepare. And then here's our Expo example. And you look here, it says, okay, use the frameworks. And then for React Native, it says, go get the Expo engine. Okay, that's cool. Get the Apple privacy thing. And then look, post install. And then it says, installer, do this crap with code signing, and then post integration, and that's it. Where's all the CocoaPod files normally you would see, right? Well, they're auto-generated. So you don't see that in here. But yeah, if you go into Xcode, right, and you go to open this project, man, you want to talk about a lot of CocoaPods. Look at this. This is the long laundry list of CocoaPods it takes to make a React Native /Expo app work. It's a lot. So that part kind of not great. So like I said, you have to kind of learn that in order to do this. I didn't find it hugely difficult. But I now need to go through and implement real quickly in JavaScript one of these methods in order to test it. So I've got all this Xcode out, and this is where I should probably put the Xcodes. Maybe, well, I guess I'll keep on the same screen. Let's pick on something that's easy, like scope get default. That's a pretty easy one to pick on. So let's go find scope in here. So here we're going to use structure because that's in JetBrains World how they do it. In Xcode and Visual Studio Code, there's little pull downs up here, which I do miss. It shows a plugin to edit the pull downs in because that'd be great. Let's see here. So here's our get scope default, right? And I've kind of got to go through and add support in for this. So I'm going to just look here at this spec on another monitor. So this is going to be the hardest part, right? Because I have to kind of know like what I wrote over there so that when I pass it, I know how to get it back. And I think when I'm passing it is the arguments of just a database name, if I remember right. Let me go look and see what those arguments are real quick on the other screen. That seems like it makes sense to me. So in here, we're going to say, we're going to go look at some other code I wrote because that promise resolve ain't going to work. We need to call it like this. And then I'll explain what this does. So we're just going to borrow this and bring it down here. And that way I can just cut and paste it in and then take a look at this. So we need to resolve or reject a promise to the React Native plugin. Now this is where we're going to change. We're going to call scope, and it has to be the exact same name. It's not required to be that, but that's what I do so that I don't get confused. Now, you could do the then, or you could do async await, right? So there's two ways, and I think each day I do it a different way, which is probably not good. I should probably take a look at the database ones because I'm pretty sure on database I was doing async await. Am I? Or am I doing? No, it looks like I'm doing just regular promises. And I know in Ionic I did the async await, but looks here, why did I do promises? I don't remember why I was doing promises, but okay. We'll keep with the syntax. I'm not going to rock the boat here. So we need to call get scope default, but we're going to have to pass it some things in because it needs to know about the database name, right? And so if we look here, let me bring this back up. We're passing in a database name here. Now, don't worry about resolve and reject. Those get automatically ejected in. But what we do have to worry about is this right here, this argument that we're passing in, this name of in a string type. So let me minimize that back down. Actually, I'll put that back over here in a different monitor. Oh, wife, go away. Why is... Told her I was streaming this afternoon. making sure my wife is cool. All right, let's see here. So we're gonna pass an arg's name. Inside of these database args, if I go look at this real quick here, show context, oh, not show context action. Let's go to definition. And we take a look here, it's taking a database name in. And this tells us its unique name of the database. So that kind of confirms to me that yes, I should be passing a name in. So then what I should get back is not a result of string. It would be a result of a JSON data. And this would be, boy, it'd be any really. Well, I do know what the shape of it is. It's, oh, should I make an interface for the, oh, no, wait. It's not a scope per se. I wonder if I have a JavaScript function that does this, that takes the scope and serializes it back. Let's take a look at scope and see what it's got in it. Yeah, see, the scope needs a database. Needs a database pointer, which it would have a database pointer and then the name of it. But the problem is you kind of have to know the database. And so you're getting a scope. Back from the database, but this is going to get tricky because I know the database name, but I don't keep a pointer to it. Whose database is calling this, right? Let me just double check here. I think database calls this, and I think the cool thing is database can just tweak it. So let me take a look and see who's calling this. I'm pretty sure database does the, you have to get a scope from a database object. Let's just double check that default scope. Yeah, here we go. So get scope, we send the name, and then we return a new scope, and then this. Okay, so the scope is going to come back with just, all it needs is the scope name object. I mean, I could do this and then resolve. Result. I think that's gonna work. And then what should happen is I should send back a scope. The scope, all it needs, the scope is the name. And then it's gonna pass the database pointer and make a new scope from that. And since scope does have a, let's see, right click, go to type declare creation. It does have a name property on it. Okay, that's gonna actually work. It's not, that's not really right because it doesn't have the rest of the objects on it, right? It doesn't have a database on it, so that feels kind of creepy a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I could, oh, wait a minute. Doesn't matter. I think I have to return a scope. Yeah. And this would break Ionic. So this code is shared between Ionic and React Native. All JavaScript code, I wrote a shared library. So the other thing is I can't change the shape of the interface, because if I change the shape of the interface, then I have to go fix Ionic. And I also know this code works because it works in Ionic right now. And so really, well, at least the interface does. So how does that work? Wait. What? I should probably explain that to people that are kind of new to the stream or just try to figure out what I did. All right, I'm using TypeScript. TypeScript's pretty cool because it allows me to make interfaces. So what happens is I have an interface called iCoreEngine, okay? And iCoreEngine just says, this is my core database engine. It's generic code. And then what happens is you can swap out the implementation of the engine with whatever you want. And this is a primary example of why object-oriented programming, when done properly, is super badass awesome. So I have a definition of a core engine that I have no idea what it's going to be. Is it going to be Ionic? Is it going to be React Native? Maybe it's some other framework like NativeScript. Doesn't matter. As long as they implement this interface, good to go. And then all you have to do in your app is when you start up your app, you just have to tell the engine what engine you're going to use. And then the JavaScript code is the same, regardless of the library. So that's what happens. iCore engine defines all these functions and how they should work in return. And then I have two versions of it right now. I have CBL Ionic for Ionic, and then I have CBL React Native engine for that for React Native. And so and then what ends up happening is there's right here, this is what loads up the bridge, the proxy bridge between JavaScript and React Native is this code. And this comes free when you build a new plugin. You'll go through Wizard and it'll build that code for you. But you can see here in the constructor, what I do is I register the engine and I say, hey, register the engine as being this, and this is the service locator pattern. So by registering the engine as a singleton, what's going to happen is all the JavaScript code, anytime it wants to talk to the engine, it can just say, go to the engine locator. The engine locator is going to say, oh, I'm going to go find whatever implements iCore engine that's registered. And that's what I'm going to use to make all these calls. And that's the magic behind it. It's way simpler than people can imagine. I know that some people are like, that seems like it's complicated. It's really not. And some people have called me smart for that, but I don't think I'm smart either. I think it's kind of logical way to do it. Maybe there's a better way. I'd love to hear if anybody does have that opinion, but I think it works. So I think this is going to work. This is going to give us a promise back. So we're going to say, let's go through here, get this. And then when that comes back, if we get a result back, we'll resolve that result. Otherwise, we'll reject with the error. And so this should hopefully send back either an exception with reject here, or it's going to resolve it and send the information back to the object I called it, which in this case is the database object. So I think we can write some UI code to test this out. Now, I'm not the world's best React Native UI developer. I know React pretty well. And so I am super lazy when it comes to it. I like building components to do everything. And I think React in general is best when you build small components to do things. I do have in the app here a set of screens, I'm calling them. And these are the main screens. So we're gonna go into collection and look for the scope default. There's nothing here right now, right? So that's a problem. So we need to fix that, and we need to go find something we can start with. Well, I happen to know that copy is a terrible example, but close is almost the exact same code that I need from a standpoint. It's not the exact same code, but I can start with it as a reference. So what I'm gonna do is call this scope default screen to start out with, and we can close. I guess we can close core types file. I don't need that anymore. The database I don't need right now. Let's see here. Let's go. Do I need to use? Why would I have a layout up here? I don't think I need a layout effect because I have that in a component now that does the title bar, and I'll show that off in a second. I'm just gonna kill some things that I don't think I need. I don't need this because I'll have to come up with something else to do that. I'll need a different hook, they're called. Yeah, right here, this use navigation bar title reset option. This is a hook that I wrote that just builds the navigation bar for me. Let's see here. I'm going to need a database name. So I'm going to need that in state. I need the results. I need navigation, and I need the styles and then the navigation bar. So I'm going to say this is, I'm going to call this default scope. Let's see here. Reset is going to go through and do that. That seems right. Update. This is where we're going to change the code, and we're going to change these two here. And let's see here. Database name. That all looks fine. So now we need to go through and just see if this code works. And so the way to do that, I like to do it is I've got my friend Warp here. Now I don't have to use Warp. I could use the terminal. Maybe I should use the terminal built into, because I don't have to switch between screens then. Let me open the terminal here. All right, so I'm in the directory. Clear npm. I should do an npm run build real quick here, but when I do a build, a pre-build, Xcode kind of freaks out. So I'm gonna actually take my Xcode project and close it just in case. It does change some stuff with the pod files, and so every single time that happens, it's not world's greatest for Xcode. and Expo will come and say, hey, these files have changed. Are you sure do you want to close this, reopen it or whatever? My fear is that's going to cause some file corruption. And I've been through all the years. I've been through that multiple times, right? So I'm not doing anything that I think can cause me to get like a file corrupt, because that's not a world I want to live in. So now I did a pre-build. I can just do, I've got an npm set up that actually just runs all this. And so I've got some ones that don't necessarily come with Expo. They're just quality of life, like pre-built clean will clean it. This will do a pre-build on it. This will do a start, but really I like to run Expo run at iOS. So I just say npm run iOS. And that takes all the work out of it. I know I could just run Expo run iOS, but I'm an npm guy, doing web for a long time. And I just find it easier. You don't have to know that, like if you're a new developer to the project, you can just go look at the package.json file. You don't have to know these commands. You just go look at package.json and say, what the heck's possible? Oh, that's possible. That's what I want to do. So what this does is this builds the iOS project. Oh boy. And like I said, there's a lot of CocoaPods there. So pack a lunch. This could take a quick moment. Once it builds all of those, it's going to start a web server. It's going to host the JavaScript layer there, and it's going to beam an app that you could talk, that will talk and serialize the UI back and forth and JavaScript calls between the server and the mobile app that it's going to install into. That's how React Native works with Expo specifically. And this is actually called Metro. That's the web server that runs. And that is the same between React Native and Expo, honestly. It's just in Expo, they use a new version called Hermes. And that's the one that you really want. It's the hot loving one that works really well with hot reload. And like I said, Expo has a bunch of quality of life improvements, which we'll see here in a second here. So it's going to install on the iPhone Pro here. So let's keep... we'll keep this example open. Oop, that's also it. I don't want that. I want this example open over here because this is my Ionic version. And let's go to the scope screen and take a look at that. Default scope. That looks cool. And now we can go over to the tab over here in collection and go to... Do I not have a screen for this? Let's go get default scope. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. So default scope, it looks very similar. You can see over here on the left, or the right, excuse me, this is Ionic. I got a title, I've got a database, a play button, database name, and some results. And pretty much the same. The only difference is here, I've got a divider here, but this is a single field. I don't really need a divider, I don't think, right? So I think that that's working. We just need to wire up some service code to actually go through and get the default and return it back. So let's go here. I think that that's cool. We can keep it running. So I can just make this minimized, and I'll come back to that in a second. Hot reload's working. So as long as you're just changing JavaScript code only, you can hot reload this and it's going to work all day. So I can change this JavaScript code. It's going to dynamically update. So if we look at the database update function here, you see here that originally we were calling close. So I'm trying to embrace this whole React-like functional programming world. So I'm trying to, instead of make like a service class, which just, has like, all my calls to my APIs and stuff. I'm trying to do it with with functions. And so you can see here, I've got database file log. I'm going to make a new folder in here called collection or scope, because this will be in here, and we can just grab like close, for example. Take a look at the code here, grab this, put it into scope. This is going to be default.ts. And we're going to grab that code in, and we're going to say this is default scope. And we need a database, set of databases, and database name. We're going to get the database, and instead here, we're going to say let, or const result scope equals await database get default. There should be a default scope on here. There it is. Okay. And put a semicolon after that, and then I can return. But we don't want to return a string. We want to return a scope. Of a scope. And then we're going to say return scope. our result. Scope. We'll make this nullable, and then we'll say, actually that should work because we should return scope. Nope, it's not gonna work because, oh, we gotta import scope from here. And then Promise gonna be mad because, oh, fix prettier. They actually have this option right here. Does this reformat prettier when you right click? I recommend using that. You can also use the keyboard shortcut, but that works pretty well. This should work because we should say we're going to get a scope back, return it. If the database isn't there, we're going to throw a new exception. All paths return back, so it should be happy from that standpoint. And we're just going to, well, we have scope here, so I don't like call my file name default scope because the folder names are named scope. It's obvious that this is scope. So I think that the file name is fine. So let's go back here to our default here, which is also in a scope folder. That's why I'm not calling it default scope. And let's import in, import default scope from wait. Oh, services, isn't it? It's services. And then I think it's lowercase scope. ID is not really helping me out here. Okay, now it says it's just unused, so that's cool. So now we should be able to say const scope equals default scope. And that should get there. Oop. And then once we have the scope back, we can send a message back that says, what is it? I think it's this scope. Scope. Default scope. And I want to say scope dot name. Why is, oh wait, that's right. Previous. My man here, is it just a formatting problem again? It is. That's weird though that autocomplete didn't help me here. There it goes. No, it did. It should know that though. It should know that this is returning back a scope. It's saying it's an any. It's not an any. That's why. Did I do my export backwards? Let's just do this and see if the ID will import for me. Import. There we go. Just have the ID do it for you. Import default scope. Yeah, I had the squiggly brackets on it. That was what the issue was. That should work. We should get a default scope. We should find it and then print it out. Oh, now does that work? And some days I feel like a complete noob. Some days I love TypeScript. You know what, man? TypeScript. Oh boy, I could go on some pretty epic rants about TypeScript. Some days it's like sometimes it tries too hard to do what it's doing, and it just makes your code more hard to read. And it doesn't. Some days I don't see the value. Some days I get where the JavaScript haters that hate TypeScript are like, man, no, we don't need type inference to make ourselves better. We can just write if statements and stuff to check this kind of stuff. Yeah, sort of, I guess. I don't know. I come from strongly structured languages like C# and Java, and so I'm used to having the types built in and doing that. But I can understand some days where like this, I should probably put a promise void on this, right? But it's just inferring it, so it's like there's still some of that old school like um, JavaScript jank, I would call it, basically, that allows you to get away with that kind of stuff. Um, but should you do that? I definitely feel like some days TypeScript burns me more than it's helping me. And it has a lot to do with this trickery I'm doing with interfaces. Um, and the difference between an interface and a type, that's the other thing that kind of annoys me. And a lot of developers don't understand that. They use one versus the other and then they get confused. There are a couple small differences between these two things. Enough to burn you. If you're exporting, especially, if you don't understand the differences between them. So let's see here. I need to go and open a database here. So let's go back to databases, database, open test one. I'll give it a file location and that opened the database. I know my code's working then. Now I can go over to collection, say default scope and say test one. And let's see what happens. I get a BAMO. Objects are not valid as React children. Found object error. Well, that did not work out the way I wanted it to. Retry. Let's see here. So my database should still be open in memory. Let's do this. Let's shake. So if you go to device and shake, this will bring up the React. This is Expo. I got an interview yesterday, and the interview says I got 8 developers, and all of them are back end. They built a front end in React, but now they need a React specialist. So it's not suitable for this role, but it figures a bunch of .NET devs worked on the front end, and all the cracks are showing. Yeah, it's React is easy to write. It's also easy to write wrong. It's really easy to write bad React, especially if you don't understand state. And usually what will happen is they'll just say, "Hey, I'm just going to wrap everything and use callback and memo, and that's going to fix all the problems." No, you should probably understand why you're having problems and fix those. Don't get me wrong, memo is a powerful thing, but it's not always the right answer. And there's a lot of YouTube guys out there talking about this and gals, and so I'd say go watch them. If you're looking for that, Jack is great on YouTube. He does a lot of React videos, and he used to work for Walmart and a couple other big enterprise companies. I trust his opinion a lot. Theo used to work at Twitch. He wrote the chat module, I think, for that. He's a big React fan. And those two are probably some of the bigger people out there. I would say you could trust their opinions on React because they've written really complicated React things. I was leading the team at Couchbase that converted our website, our cloud-based solution, Capella, from Svelte into React. So I know quite a bit about enterprise React and like its pitfalls. And so yeah, it's not necessarily fun. And a bunch of .NET developers, if they understand React, it's no different than asking a bunch of JavaScript developers to write a C# backend. If they don't know what they're doing, they're gonna take their JavaScript knowledge and write the world's worst backend API. If they don't know like what disposables are and all the idiotisms of C# and all the patterns and stuff, yeah, they could write some really bad code, especially if it involves link and databases. Oh boy, you could write some really crap-tastic code there. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to open the JavaScript debugger. Now, what this should do when everything works perfect is it should open Chrome in a debug window and let me debug this JavaScript code. Now, this works about 50% of the time, and the other 50% of the time you get something like this. So we're going to clear this because this is the previous error, and I don't need this. So I'm going to clear the console. That's not helping me, and I'm going to go to sources. Now, when this works, you should be able to get to your sources right here, and we should be able to kind of debug everything. So we have 3 things. We have our app bundle, which we don't care about. This is going to be our code, and then this will be hopefully our node modules. So we want this folder right here, the user's React Native, right? And so you can see here, this is my app. This is my lib common, which is going to give me my plugin I wrote, my React Native plugin, right? And we're going to want to look at that because we need to figure out like where our stuff is falling apart. So to start out with, we're going to go look at the scope function for getting default scope and see whether or not we can see whether or not. So here's the problem. I already know where the problem is. Take a look at this. Undefined. I changed my JavaScript code, but it didn't push to the device. That's what's going on here. And so this happens to me like all the freaking time where it just, I make changes, hot reload should work, it doesn't work. So this means there's possibly nothing wrong with my code. It's instead just not synced between the two. Even though we take a look here, we can see that in my default, well, that code I wrote, where's the React Native project? Right here, native module. I know for a fact we changed this code right here, right? So how do we fix this? Well, that's what I told you earlier. I wrote those npm things. So let's go back, kill both these. Well, I didn't need to kill the Ionic one, but I definitely need to kill this one. All right, we're gonna go back to our terminal. We're gonna close the terminal. Or we're gonna stop Expo from running. Actually, it's Metro, it's called. I should use proper React terminology, otherwise some React persons could be like, hey, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He called it this one, it's this instead. Sometimes React people can be very squishy is the only way I can think of it to say it. Let's see here. That's a gaming term. Stop being sarcastic. Don't cancel me, please. Let's see here. So I'm gonna go back to the main project where my native module is, and I'm gonna run npm run clean, and then I'm gonna do an npm run build. This is gonna force Bob to run, and Bob is the React Native builder, and that's gonna guarantee that my TypeScript gets compiled down to CJS, CommonJS, and that's how I'm distributing out my JavaScript code minified to my Expo app, or really to any app. I'm going right straight at Reddit. Okay, yes, please do. Thanks, TV Gamer. You're always on my side. What a great friend. Let's see. All right. So I had to go through a build. What that's going to do is that's going to build the distro folder, right? And this is a web project. So that's going to minify all the JavaScript code, put it in that distro folder. So that's going to say, hey, look, if you have any changes to your iOS code, it's going to make those relevant inside of that distro folder also, or your Android code in Kotlin, right? Today we're just playing with iOS, but it'd be the same thing. I should talk to the camera up here, not over here. This is where my side screen I can see the chat from is at. All right, and so now that I have the module built, I have to retell the app, the actual Expo app, to rebuild itself to bring in that. Now, we know that I already did this once and it didn't work, which means we're going to have to do a clean on it. So this is why I said I had pre-build.clean defined. And what this does is it's like, hey, some changes happened and I want to force you to reread all my module changes. And so that's what pre-build clean does. Now, when it does this, it wipes out the iOS and Android directories. It's like, it's a nuclear option at epic scales, right? So you have to worry, you can't have an Expo, you can't have custom iOS and Android code running because it's just gonna get nuked if you do a clean. So that's why you should always have like that build script I showed you earlier. You should have that inside your native module. And if you want to do customizations to an Expo app, you have to build a native module. You have to build some kind of module that loads into Expo because that's the world of how Expo works. And if you don't do this, if you try to buck it, you're going to hate yourself. Yeah, Bob the Builder. I'm not kidding. Hey, I can't make this shit up, man. It's that's a React thing altogether. React team called him Bob the Builder. So I'm sure there's some kind of acronym that stands for like binary optimization build or something like that, binary optimized build or something like that. I'm sure that's what Bob stands for, but it's also pretty hilarious if you have kids or if you know who Bob the Builder is. So one up on the React Native team for coming up with that. That's pretty funny. So now that we did that, we did a pre-built with the cache clean. Now we can go through and run this again. So we can just do an npm run iOS. Like I said, I could run the Expo command, but I am super lazy. I know npm. I don't want to memorize all these darn commands. The commands are different for Ionic versus this versus that. Just put them in your Expo or in your package.json file and use that to figure this stuff out. That way you're not getting yourself crazy with all memorizing 1,000 commands. I always say in the world of development, it's easier to learn the concepts than to memorize syntax. I can look syntax up any day of the week for any language, right? I can just go to the internet. It's always available. I have books if I don't have the internet, but I mean, really, I don't know what to say. I can look up that syntax, right? So then the real problem is understanding the concept of what it's doing is far more important That's what you're going to get questioned on in an interview, or those are the things that you need to know because otherwise you can't ask the question of how to find the syntax. So I memorize the concepts and I just use myself to abuse myself to find the syntax of what I'm looking for. But I don't get too lost in memorizing 1,000 commands. I know I can look those things up when I need to. I'm also filling here for why the build happens. I'm just kind of trying to keep the conversation going because the build does take a good minute to build. And you can see here, Watchman's now coming up and it should launch my app. Yes, the thing that watches the files to see if they change the hot reloader is called Watchman. So you have Metro, which is kind of running the web server. You have Watchman that's watching the file changes. And then Herms is technically speaking the communication layer that they're using. And this is the new stuff in React Native. I'm going to go to device and shake, to shake my love. If I was Debbie Gibson fan, Just Can't Shake Your Love, I think was a great song from the 80s. And I'm going to open the JavaScript debugger. And that should get me back here to my place I was before. I'm going to go back to network here. Sources, I mean. I'm going to go to my IP address, go to my app, find my Expo app. And a couple things I want to debug. I want to debug the libcommon, and I'm going to go into my React Native plugin and see if I have my code from my default. I do, right here. Perfect. Okay. So this tells me I can at least find out if this is failing or if it's happening coolio, right? I can put two breakpoints there, and now we should be able to hit some breakpoints. So let's go into open database. We'll call this test1, open the same file again, click the play button, that's cool. Go to collections, go to get default scope, go to test1, and click the play button, and we should get a breakpoint. So what did we get back? If we go look here, we got a result back with a database name of test1, and the scope is called _default. That's the correct answer for $200, Alex. That's exactly what it should have came back. So this code's working, man. So the whole issue, remove breakpoint, was that I just didn't have a clean build, which has been the story of my life. And there we go. There's my message. Now, what I can do is retest this to see whether or not the stat path, right? I'm going to just use test4, and that should fail because I don't have a database called test4. And so what should happen is I should get, well, I shouldn't have got that. So we need to go find why that page is actually craptastically crashing. It should come up with an error message versus that. Dismiss, retry. So we're not getting a sad path, a good sad path here. And we should get a happy sad path. So let's see here. We need to go to our default page then. Minimize the terminal here and take a look here. Oh, that's our function. Let's go into here to our page. If we have an error, so first of all, let's see what happens here. We're saying set result message to previous plus error name required. Okay, what is the results using? It's a list view, and it takes the messages in. That seems right. What was the React error working again? That seems right. Objects are not valid as React children. Found object error. You want them to oh, so result is coming back as an error object. So what's happening here is we're coming back here. Yeah, it's right here. So the problem is that it's come back as an error object, so it doesn't know how to render an error object. It only knows how to render a string. So you'd have to do trickery like this. I know that looks trickery. It is trickery. But that would technically speaking work because you're going to make it a string in TypeScript and then just prepend whatever error is on top of it. But really, the proper answer is that error should have a message. Something like this. And that should be the proper answer to this. Let's go here and take a look at this. Try this again. Retry. Collection default test4. Yeah, there we go. Database not in context, open database first. So there it goes. That was the whole problem. So it's type inference. Once again, TB Gamer, we're talking about whole TypeScript and stuff. And so type inference says error is just a type of JavaScript error message, right? But my state here, my result message state is only handling an array of strings because it doesn't know what kind of result it's going to get back, right? It just knows that it needs to display some stuff. And since strings are the most logical thing to just send back to the screen because it's just a demo example app, right? The easiest thing to do then is to bring back strings. Now, technically speaking, this should not be needed anymore because error.message should be of type string. So that should still work. Now, if we go back to default scope, test 5, 6, there it goes. So that's the whole time. Now, I've copied that screen from a different screen, which means that screen's also busted. So we need to go look at that real quick. I think I copied that from, not copy. I think I did from close. Let's go take a look at close's code and make sure that that is also doing it right. Yeah, it's right here. Oh, we should probably check the other of these because I probably copy and pasted these over and over again because I'm super lazy. Nope, this one uses the string hack, which, I mean, that's not wrong either. I mean, that would work, but the proper thing to do here would just say, actually, that is proper because I don't know what result is. This is wrong because I know what type of error it is and I know error has a message on it. And that should fix it. Prettyfy this thing. Wait, what? Anudo error. Error has a message object on it. Now that's interesting. Why did copy do that, but default didn't come back with the type error? There's default. Error message. Oh, I have a ts-ignore on it. That's why. Never mind. TypeScript ignore me. I know for a fact that that's right. And this is the problem with TypeScript then, right? You end up doing those kind of things because it's like, well, I know the error object has that on it. It's a built-in object. I didn't, I'm just calling the JavaScript one. Views on. I don't know who that is, but that seems like that's a... State and stuff messes with my head. I've been using NGX signal stores and Angular app, and I think I have an idea how to use them. And then I see a new concept, and I reset back to, I have no idea. Yeah, state's not hard, right? Okay, let me take that back. The concept of state can be simplified. It's just something in memory, right? And the theory of functional programming is that this is all functional programming crap, right? The theory is that state is immutable. And so you need something to track that, the mutations of it. And this is supposedly the world is going to end because of the fact that all the bugs that have ever happened is because of state. That's at least that nulls. That's what at least I hear from the internets. State stores are just instead of keeping track of a single variable in state, keeping a whole bunch of stuff in one place to go look at it. And so there's things called, so in state we have our, not diffusers, we have our slices that we're going to slice our data back down to. And this is the ability to get new and previous versions of the data. And so a lot of times it's just about that and understanding it. The React's biggest problem, I think most JavaScript developers don't understand, is that React is looking at the pointer to the, not the value. And that's the thing that gets people burnt, is that they think that React state and stuff is looking, oh, I'm going to compare this object to this object. If they have the same value, it's cool. It's like, no, that's not how it works at all. It looks at a pointer memory reference, an address in memory on the stack and heap. And then, even though this is JavaScript, it still uses a stack and heap. It's going to look at that pointer and it's going to check the pointer to see whether or not it's the same pointer. And if it is, then they're the same value. If not, they are not. And that's how React re-rendering happens all the time, where people think that they have this all set and, maybe it's an object that has a string inside of it. They're like, well, but the string never changed inside of it. Yeah, but the object, if the reference to the object changed, then yes, you have a refresh. You're going to do a redraw, a repaint, because of the fact that the object variable pointer changed. That's why people use things like callback and memo and try to solve that problem to keep the reference the same. But states, signal stores and Angular are very similar to state stores in React. And they're just a way of keeping things in global memory. They're like big global variables in many ways, but with slices and dispatchers to go through and like e- give you parts of the data back so that you can basically build a new version of it. So, and the example I'll give you here is the result message, right? So I have state here. The problem is that um, the result message is an array. Well, you should never modify the array, right? So if you're going to set it as a string of arrays, a array of strings, right? If I want to modify it, I have to build a new array of strings and set it. Well, then the only way to build a new version is I want to keep the previous version of values and I want to append the new one onto it. And so that's the syntax here. So we're just basically saying, give me the previous version of the values I had inside of this state and then keep those, but add this new one in. And by doing that, you're creating a new version. A new version requires a pointer change. A pointer change then would require a re-render, which is what I want. I want the list view in the bottom to re-render whenever I add to the array. Well, if we think about this for a second, arrays are objects. So they have a single pointer in memory, okay? That's a single memory address. If I just add a new string to that array, it did not change the value of the pointer of where the array is stored in memory. So because of that, React would not do a re-render. Because it's like, wait a minute, you added a string to this array, but the memory address is the same. I'm not going to re-render. So React is all about that. React, the virtual DOM or the shadow DOM, whatever you want to call it, it's all based on checking to see when values change. When certain values change and it says, oh, okay, I know that that thing is mapping to this particular thing and that changed its address. So that means I need to re-render it. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm explaining that well, is that the theory is that if I add a string to an array, I don't change the memory address of where the array is actually being stored. I just added a value to it. But if I go through and basically make a new version of that array, a copy of the array, adding a new value to it, my memory address changes. Now it's going to force React to do a re-render. And how React's doing that is that basically right here, this result list view, this is a component I made. I'm sending it in this variable, which is that array. Right. And so the minute this happens, the DOM, the virtual DOM, is going to make a memory address. It's going to point to that array's memory address. And it's going to say, here this component is. Whatever's inside that component, it's going to re-render if the memory address of this thing changes for any reason. And so that's the trick to it. And that's the reason why we need state stores for React is to kind of go through and do these slicers. Slicers like automatic ability, and reducers is another way that you can do it to change values of an array basically so that you can get a copy of the values that you want in there so that you can get the darn thing to re-render. That's it. Effects are dangerous because people don't understand their play with fire. I'd say in React, that's the number one thing is people try to use effects a lot and they're just not needed. 99% of the time, you probably don't need an effect. There are times where you need it, but it's pretty rare. And normally I'd be using hooks, but because all my data comes from a interaction with the user, a button click, I don't need a hook. A hook runs when the render mounts, or when the component mounts, a hook will run. Okay, and that's the biggest thing that most people understand about React is that, okay, a hook is supposed to run no matter what. Components should never have life cycle things. Those are functions, right? If a user interacts with something on the screen in React, well, then only when they interact should you run something. That's not a hook anymore. That's like a service call or some kind of call to go get something from somewhere, right? That's somebody else's job. But a hook very specifically is like, how can I hook into the component rendering model and then give it some things to render with when the component starts up? That's the way I think of it. And all my stuff is based on you clicking this button that's going to run this update function that goes through and gets the database and then goes and grabs some stuff and renders it. It's way easier than people can imagine. I think React is probably one of the easiest frameworks I've ever used, but I'll totally flat out admit that, man, React is really easy to get wrong. It's really easy to bite. So Angular's awesomeness is in the fact that it's really hard to write bad Angular code. Angular forces you into a lot of patterns, and those patterns are good patterns. And as long as you're using those patterns, you're cool. But in React's world, it's like they kind of just give you your ability to hang yourself at any time. It's not great from that standpoint. They're very basic, and they usually make you go out and find a framework like Go, Expo example and stuff in order to do anything complicated with it. And then you're kind of suckered into their concepts. And if you don't understand those concepts, you're probably going to have some bad times. All right, so our default screen worked. That is a big W in my column. We should be able to go through. And what else did we write in Swift? We got to go look at Swift now. Oh, you can see here, I rebuilt an Xcode. I had it open by accident, and this is what I was talking about, where Xcode kind of freaks out. And now you get this whole save Xcode version thing, which scares the shit out of me, right? It's like, oh no, I'm probably going to get like some file corruption, so just close. The answer is, if you do this by accident, just close. Because the pod file got rebuilt, and if you tried to like save the Xcode version, the whole world will probably melt. It's just a very finicky environment. Yeah, in many ways. React is very small. People don't realize React Native comes with like 5 UI components, and that's it. That's it. 5 UI components. Maybe I think 7. It comes with hardly nothing. People think that all these things that React Native does come from React Native, but that's not true. They usually come from other libraries. Like even out of the box, React Native doesn't have great routing. You have to go to Expo or some other framework to build routing. What? Well, if you think about it, even React Web, the DOM version of React, has no routing. That's a React router. It's a separate package. React didn't have that built into it. React, what it's bringing to the game is this virtual DOM, or this virtual, they call it React Fibers now. That's the true engine that's running the virtual node stack of elements in the UI tree and figuring out which elements in the UI tree should be re-rendered, which one of them cannot stay not being re-rendered. That is what React brings to the table. Brings nothing else than that. Anything else you're pretty much doing is probably coming from a third-party library or another framework that is popular with React. Xcode can be rough if you don't know what you're doing. I did native development for years, so I feel really at home in Xcode. I feel probably more not at home when I'm doing things like this, like React Native, just because the comfort is no longer there, right? I know how to make Xcode work. I know how to use it as an editor. I know how to get around it and do the things I need to do with it. And you'll see here, this will go away in about 2 seconds. Down to 0 errors because it had to go through and do the whole CocoaPod file and the whole 9 yards before it realized, oh no, this is cool. Let's take a look at what else we did in scopes because I honestly don't remember what I just wrote. So it's here. I have get scopes, and then you can get a scope by name. We should probably get scope first and then maybe the scopes last, because that's going to revolve looping through the names. But honestly, Xcode is pretty basic. You can see here you get these little pull downs. This is like Visual Studio Code where you can get your functions. And if you're using Swift, it's a pretty easy language. It's like Kotlin, in my opinion. It's very easy to learn. I wouldn't say it's impossible to master. There's just all kinds of archaicness that comes with iOS and doing Swift programming because a lot of times there's some old legacy stuff in Object-C and you're still calling back to those Object-C crap. And that's where Swift starts to break down is when there's 2 versions of a string. There's an NS string, which is like the Object-C version of a string, and then Swift just calls it a string. And you can convert between these two value types, right? But it's not something that's just built in. You had to kind of do some work on that, and it kind of sucks then. React Native is completely built on Object-C. So you can use Swift as a programming language, but you have to do all this data converting then in order to make it all work. But Swift is a way better syntax than Object-C. And I wrote Object-C for years. I'm here to say that it was great in its day because it's all we had, but now we have Swift and it's better. I'd rather use Swift. And I think you talk to the average native developer, they're going to be like, yeah, Aaron's right. You should just use Swift. It's type safety. And it's the same argument that people make for TypeScript. Swift does a bunch of things that allows you, basically hides, it makes it so you can't do the pointer magic BS that you can do in Object-C and get yourself into trouble. Like in Object-C, I can go find a private API that's never been exposed and call that functions inside that private API with some pointer magic. In Swift, that's not possible. It's just, it's more tied down and type. And because of that, it's a little bit safer, I think, which is cool, right? I like safe. Safe is good. As a programmer, safeness means less bugs usually. So let's see, we had scope get default, we got scopes, and then we have get scope, a scope by itself. We should be able to write some code for this. So let's go and get a scope next, and then we'll go through and get scopes. And that should require a little bit more work. So I'm gonna hide that again. I'm trying to think here. All the Xcode code is there, so we should not need to do another build. I'm trying to decide whether I should hide or close Xcode. I should close Xcode just in case I have to do another build, and I don't want to have that screen message coming up because I'm pretty sure. Oh, what did I make a change to? Change. This is also the scary thing. When you like open a file, you're like, wait, what? What? Did I make a change? It's not good if I made a change. The problem is I'd have to rebuild. I need to pay more attention to what I'm doing here because I bet you Prettier, the linter, probably made a space change. I'm gonna say no. No, it didn't ask me. Oh boy. This could be rough, folks. There we go. I'm very concerned about this. Now I'm kind of curious what that has happened here. Because the build should be running on the previous version. Let's just go make sure it scopes. All the code I wrote for scopes in there. All the scope code is here. Okay, that's cool. Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge if we need to. I wrote it once, I can write it again. Worst case scenario. All right, let's see here. So we kind of have to do the same gig that we did here. For first, we have to update. Oh, we will have to do another build because we have to update the native engine, which is going to implement the Swift code, and then we can call it inside of our UI code. We will have to do another build. Where is terminal? We can kill terminal altogether because we're going to have to do another build. But let's crack, I guess, both these out maybe at the same time. That way we don't have to do so many builds. We can copy this code because it's almost the same as that code. We want to say instead here that we want to say get scope. And we need to pass it two things. We need to pass it a args dot name and scope name. Now here comes the next problem. I need to open Xcode back up. Jeez, I just closed it now. I'm noob here. I'm feeling noob vibes. They're both strings. The problem is that in the bridge, it's going to be like whatever order Xcode says, Swift says they should be in, that should be the order in. And since they're both strings, if you don't get the order right, this is going to obviously fail pretty bad. So when we get scope, our order is we give it a name. How do we give it just a name without a database name? Oh, this is written wrong. There's no way that's going to work. Oh, that's default scope. That would work. That's database name. I need scope. Whoa, okay. Here we go. We're giving it two things. We're giving it a database name and then a scope name. And so it has to be in that order. If it's not in that order, where it's going to be sad puppies and kittens. No rainbows. So we need to make sure that database name is first, and I have it backwards. So it should be name and then scope name. And this, folks, is the hardest part of doing this. Is literally getting these things right. But the rest of this code is the same. It is literally the same because both these return a scope. And the UI should be the same, honestly. I mean, literally, I could probably write one screen that does both these and just pass in the name of the function to call, and it would be the exact same code. No, it would not. No, it can't be. I have to give it the name of the scope to look for. Can't be the same UI code. This code's the same, but not the latter. Let's see here. Should I also write this code here? This is, I might have to, what's the scope result? Go to type. I wrote this, but I don't remember what it is. It's an array of scopes. I'm probably going to return array of scopes. That's right, because I wrote that in Xcode. And I'm pretty sure it's NS dictionary of scopes, which is the same thing as an array. It's just a key value. Sorry, it's a key value. It's like JSON basically. It's key value pairs. So get scopes takes in a database name, and then we'll give you all the scopes inside of that database. Okay, so it only takes one value in, and then I think right here I have a dictionary. I send scopes back with a dictionary, and the dictionary is a NS dictionary that I have my data adapter convert for me. This all makes sense to me. All right, I just wrote this code this morning. So here's the real world of a developer. You don't remember what you did 4 hours ago based on a meeting that you had and a bunch of other things. And you're like, wait, I wrote it like this, right? Anybody that's out there saying that that's not how they think and they're some kind of Uber programmer, I look at the code I wrote 4 hours ago like it's brand new code. Foreign to me, even though I wrote it. So yeah, you gotta look around, especially on a big code base like this. I mean, this thing's like over 100,000 lines. I want to say this, it's a pretty big code base to do this. So it's not small, to say the least. And so when you're the only developer working on it, I'm the only developer at the company working on it right now. It's a lot to keep track of in your mind. Let's see here. I never forget anything. I am 50 times developer. You are the developer. You're an Uber developer. If you can remember everything, man, you are better than me because like I said, I had lunch. I went and talked with my wife and had a little Scooby snack and I forgot everything I worked on this morning. I came back from lunch and said, I should go on a stream now. And then I was like, yeah, I'll just work on the stuff I was working on this morning. Continue on that. Yeah, I don't remember anything I wrote this morning. Let's see here. But I think we can get this get scope working. And then this even is pretty basic also because I'm pretty sure the database object, now I wrote the database object like 2 months ago, but I'm pretty sure the database object also does the same thing as I do here, is where I have to adapt it back out with the database in it. So scopes should do the same thing. Yep. And then scopes should loop through the scopes. Yep. And here's my for loop. I'm going to push them into an array because I need to give it the database pointer and return that as the true scope. Okay. I do remember how the database object worked, and it worked exactly how I thought it worked, which means I absolutely can write this almost the same way. So since I don't want to remember or type all that in, I'm going to be super lazy and cut and paste. Any developer that tells you they don't cut and paste, well, that's fine. You don't have to cut and paste if you don't want to. I'm going to because I don't like typing unless I have to. Get scopes should be the name of the function, which we should check in Xcode to make sure. And I closed Xcode and I completely forgot as I get scopes. This is where these don't have to match, but they should. Right here. So get scopes. We don't care about the resolver and rejector. Let's grab get scopes. Make sure that's the exact same thing there. And this needs to be get scopes here. Actually, this is the interface implementation because I defined that in TypeScript. This, however, is the native bridge. This doesn't have to be the same name as this. I force it to be the same name because I get confused easily. And so by making these the same name, I know that this call is going to call this and it's going to return whatever I need. And result is not a type of scope. It's a type of array of scopes. No, it's a scope result. And I can resolve that, or I can reject error. Let's see here, get scopes name then. Wait. That's that function. That was right. What do I got going on here? I got squiggly bracket problems. I got 5,000 squiggly bracket problems, and you're not one of them. Let's see here. Why is it mad here? Function who declares the undefined void ID must return a value type. No. Dude, we're gonna return that, man, I promise. function who declares either an undefined void or any must return a value type. Oh. Is this the first time I run into this? This can't be true. I've sent data back before. I sent it back in default. Hurry up here. We were Coolio. Why you're not Coolio? Get scopes, then error. Oh, there's something going on here. I have an extra set of these. And then I'm missing my function right here. I copy and pasted too much. No, is this right? Then that's my then statement. That's right. That should be closed function. That should be closed class. Can't find the resolve. What? That's the built-in promise stuff, man. Dude, what? Am I somehow closing the class here? Nope. Is this like some kind of bad joke? Maybe that's not a bad joke. That's right. Get scopes. Database args. That's right. I'm gonna promise back a scope result. Okay. This should be like get scopes name then result of scope result resolve or reject. I mean, close the function, close the class. Everything is right here. Am I going crazy here? I've like cut and pasting blindly. If I want to run new code, I never copy and paste samples. I agree. I don't ever like if I get some recommendations from the Copilot or something like that, I don't blindly cut and paste that stuff. I need to understand it first. But if it's my own code I'm cutting and pasting, I'm trying to save a compliance code, I'm cool with that. Why are we freaking out here though? Promise is right. Promise is right here. I didn't cut and paste that. Let's just do this. Let's go back, rewind time to where this worked, and then get the understanding of why it's not working. Okay, so this worked here. Return. And this should be not needed here. And then we should be able to say this is scope result. Scopes result. It now works. It was obviously a bad cut and paste I did somewhere. TV Gamer was right. Don't cut and paste, kids. That should work. That should work. So, oh, get scope is now undefined. Oh boy, I accidentally went. I rewound too far back in time. I have to redo this one. And this should be the exact same name as step 4. We're gonna say, and then we have to pass it two things. What will we passing it? We're passing it. I think the scope name first. I went too far back in time. This is why time travel is dangerous, kids. If you go back in time, you can meet your parents and then die, or worse, you could like delete some of the code you wrote and then have to go look it up another time, like what order things need to be in. Database name, scope name second. So it should be name, and then args.scope name. And it should be that, and they should work the same way. All right, kids, we've got 3 new functions that are 2 new juicy functions for scopes that should be puppies and kittens, rainbows ready for us. Let's go back over to the terminal, and now we have to do the dirty deed. What dirty deed do you ask? That's a good question. The dirty deed is the npm. Tell Bob to build. We got to get Builder Bob in here. He's gonna build some stuff. Bob, can you please build? Bob builded. He did the builds. He's a pretty interesting guy, Bob. That dude. When you talk to him, he's a big fan of whatever you tell him to do. I'm a big fan of telling Bob to build some stuff. And so usually you use something called Babel. There's a couple of different things you can use, but Babel's mostly the magic here. Tell it to make a preset of React Native. But really Bob's goal or job is jumped in. Where is my source here? And source here, that's not it. Right here in the lib directory, this is where I'm dumping all the builds. So you can see here, common.js, this is for our just minification. Here's our node module. This should come with a bunch of other cool stuff. And then we have our TypeScript version for people that need the type defs. TypeScript, this will give you like a map and stuff so that if you're debugging this and you're using TypeScript and you bring my package in, you can do the TypeScripts, which is kind of nice. And so that's what the distro is doing, is basically dumping these things into this folder and minifying. If you look at my code here, this is the minified version. It's not the production level minification. You can see here, you still see variable names and stuff, but it's converted from TypeScript into JavaScript. If you do a production build, then you get the ugliness. I don't like the ugliness of production builds. I can't debug that. So I try to just do regular builds and only do production when I'm pushing to production, which I'm not. That's the reason why the minified code does not look as ugly as it could possibly be. It could be way uglier. All right, here. So we did a build. We told Bob to hang out with us and do a build. Now we need to go into our Expo example app and tell it also to hang out and do the builds. So let's bring terminal back up here. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do an npm run. Now we're gonna do a pre-build clean, because last time we did a pre-build by itself, it didn't clean the junk in our trunk and it did not see our JavaScript code changes. We want to see our JavaScript code changes, so we need to clean the junk in our trunk. And the only way to do that is with a pre-build of a clean type, and that will tell it to nuke everything, start over, Luke, and put everything in the proper spot. This does take a good minute to do, and I don't even have the Android code in here yet. So I mean, a pre-build will take probably for Expo a couple minutes when I have all the native code running and stuff, because Android balloons the build time by almost double, over double. Android, at least on my computer, I've got a Mac Studio 2. It's got an M2 in it, Ultra. My Ionic build times for Ionic iOS, which is a pretty fair comparison for iOS, around about 20-25 seconds. Android could be over a minute, sometimes a minute and a half. That's bonkers in my mind. So yeah, Android can be very inefficient at times. Let's see here. So we've got that done. So now we can just do an npm run build, or run iOS, and that will tell Expo to go run, and that'll start Metro and get our app back up and running. And then we can go through and modify this puppy in the house. So we need scope. We should be able to get a scope. Let's look at our app here, actually. I think we're missing some stuff in our app. So now it's building, and this will take another. The pre-build just built the iOS projects. Now this actually builds all the code and pushes it to the device. So pre-build is like pack a lunch, and now we got to watch a build again. A double header here. I'll quick clear. My wife's texting me something while we're waiting for the builds. What does she want? She is warning me that I may lose power. because the storm map is looking pretty bad here, folks. Yikes. That's not cool. See if I can get her text off the screen here, but I'll show you the picture. That is my area right now, folks. I'm the blue dot. So yeah, that's not good. I'm gonna say that, yeah, see all those little lightning bolts? That's lightning and loss of power. That's, yeah, we might lose power here. I have battery backup here. I don't have solar, but I have battery backup here, and I can last for about an hour with the power out before I go bad. I've got a pretty big battery backup system here, mostly because I don't want to lose my code, and I've got 3D printers in the other room, and I don't want my 3D prints to fail. Yeah, get batteries, dude, man. I'm telling you. We lose power here a lot, probably at least once a month, because I live out in the country. I live out in the sticks. There's like, I live on a dirt road. There's no pavement on the road I live on. So that's when you know you're like, ooh, boy, that's, yeah, Aaron, that is rough. It is. So, yeah. And I'm realizing I'm missing a screen here because I have default scope, I have list scopes, but I don't have get scopes. But I have get collection, right? I get collection, create collection, do collection, list collection. I don't have get a collection. Why don't I have a screen to test that for either one of those? So that's a problem. We need to add those screens in. We should probably do that. That'll show us how to modify this thing and see whether or not hot reload's working. Cool example for the stream. All right, so let's see here. Expo is based on file-based routing to start with, right? So it routes based on whatever's in the file system. And that's not a bad thing. So I can just make a new page here called get.tsx. And I can say add here, and then I can just add default. I can steal default's code for right now. Copy that, paste it in here, and then change the name. And that should at least give me the ability to see this. So scope just needs to be unique. Get screen. Okay, that's cool. That should give me at least the ability to render get. And then now what we have to do is we got to go into the fancy, I've got a service that, or a hook that does this. So where's my navigation? Use document, use database, use collection navigation section. So there's a hook here, and that's where I need to modify here. Now these have all IDs in them, and they need to be unique for React because it's in a list. And if you don't have unique keys for each value in a list, React does not know how to re-render, only change values. In performance of React, you have to assign a key to anything that you're going to repeat through so it knows the uniqueness of the item in the rendering tree. Now, I said rendering tree because in the DOM, it'd be in the DOM, but since we're in React Native, there is no DOM. There's no document object model, so we're talking React Native, so it's the regular rendering tree. So we see here that we have get default scope, which is called this one 2. And we'll have to renumber these. And this is going to be get scope. And this would be get. And that routing path should say there's a folder in this folder called collection, another folder called scope, and there should be a page called get. And as long as it's there, hey, Nick says my volume is low. Really? Check in here. I'm not whitelining, but is the music volume just too loud? Is that what's going on? I can turn that down. Oh. Nick, TBD Gamer says you're deaf. Stop listening to the music. Stop listening to the music too loud, Nick. That's what TBD Gamer is saying. I'm pretty sure he may be semi-right about that. Also, you know, maybe you have Apple Music open too. I can't confirm or deny that, but I'm just saying maybe that's what you also have going. You know, or are you in your Tesla? If you're in the Tesla listening to me, that could be the problem. I have no guarantees on why the volume's low, but I'll try one of those first. Hey Nick, welcome to the stream. Long time no talk. It's been at least an hour since I've talked to you. That seems like eternity. Yeah. Yeah, if you're using Windows, that could be it also. Don't use Windows, kids. I should check the YouTube chat. I honestly only show if you're on YouTube and you're watching me on YouTube, which I know like a bunch of people watch me on YouTube. I don't know why you guys do that. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I like YouTube. So hey, if you're on YouTube, good for you, man. But I don't check YouTube chat because I use Streamlabs, and Streamlabs only shows me the Twitch chat. Um, and so, yeah. But hey, if you're on YouTube, that's cool. And I know people watch my video on demand, like by the truckloads. I don't know why. It must be bots. It must be bots like learning, like they're using it for AI intelligence and stuff. Oh crap! I kept Xcode open when it built. That's bad. That's bad. We keep doing that. I've got to remember to close Xcode. But yeah, I think there's bots that are using it. I use Restream bot, no cost. We'll put Twitch, YouTube, and YouTube to Twitch. No, no crap. Okay, TBD Gamer, he's a pro streamer here. We've got to look at this Restream bot. I've never heard of Restream bot, but let me put that in my notes of things. Let me just call up the Googles here and Restream bot and Restream. Keep your stream chats in one place. Holy shit! Oh, it's only for Windows. Oh, bummer. Oh, it does have a Mac version. Sweet. Downloaded the Mac version. I'm going to try that out. That's pretty good. That's cool. Thank you, TV Gamer. That's very nice of you for sharing that awesome knowledge. Let's see here. So we're going to get a scope. We need to change these keys to be unique. So we're going to have to renumber all these. 3 and a 4. 4. You know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hack this, folks. It just has to be unique. Is it a number? Wait. Shoot. I think it is a number. The data type. Crud. Because it's not my data type. It's their data type. It is a number. Oh wait. But should I renumber these or not? Is the question. Let's just do it the right way. I was going to use a period and just put it like 2.1. Because that's a number. It's unique. That would work, right? But my fear is that something else would break. We'll just make it integers. That's what the docs show as examples. Oh, that's not good. How do we... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. But we also need a get collection. So we have get scope. We need another one called get collection. So get default collection, create collection. We should get it after a create, right? Because the order of precedence would be you'd have to first create one. And this will just be get in here. That should fix the routing. And then now we have 2 6s. So we need this to be a 7. This needs to be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That looks good. Let's go through and re-rend. See what happens. I'm going to hit save. And if the build is still working and the world has not melted, if I go to collections, we should say get scope and get collection is there. And now we're rendering off screen because we have more menu options we know what to do with. If I go to get scope, I should get the default scope page because I copied that page, but now we got to go through and make that magic happen. This is going to be, it's 3, it's almost 4. It's almost 4. I've been running for how many hours now? An hour, 44 minutes. I have enough time to do a couple more things here. Let's see here. So this is going to get into some interesting things because we have to build some components. So we can get into some hardcore React at this point in time because we're going to need to ask for the scope on top of the database name. We can't get away with just using the default screen. It ain't going to work, kids. So let's see, how do we fix this? Well, so one, we're going to change the title of the screen to start out with, right? We're going to say this is get scope, not default scope. We are going to get rid of the import for the default because that's wrong. And we know that that's going to break our code, but that's fine. We'll fix it later. Database, result message, navigation styles, those are all cool. I'm pretty happy with you there. We're going to kill this code. Because we know that we need to call a different function, which we have not written yet, to get the scope. But to do that, we need two things. We need another thing to keep track of in state. So we want another variable that we could track via some kind of UI component that's going to be asking somebody for something. So we're going to just copy database name here because I'm a big copier. And we're going to change this to scope name. And then we need a set method because that's the React pattern. It's not really required, but at least I don't think it is. But you should follow the React pattern that your variable name, your setter should always start with the word set, but there's no get for the getter. And you'll see here instantly, as long as you follow this, you'll see here that React puts in the data type, and which is a React dispatcher. And then a set state action is what it's called. And that's how it does it. It's state management for sets. A dispatcher, just remember that's kind of like a dispatcher is kind of like an eventing thing, and it's very similar to in threading we could dispatch out like queues and stuff, right? And so that's a popular thing in computer science. But I think of it like the dispatchers for air traffic control. They're dispatching flights. They're basically telling the flight when they can leave, when they can do stuff, and kind of imagining that. Although it's probably not a great analogy, I like it. The dispatcher is going to keep track of like what's going on here, make sure that that thing happens. Now, in React Native, it's different than DOM. In DOM's world, we really only have a thread to run on in the browser, unless you get into web workers, which we're not going to talk about today. But in the world of React Native, there's actually two different threads. There's a thread that the JSX stuff is rendering on, and then there's a separate thread that the business logic is running on, that you're running on there. And so that's a thing to understand, is that there's actually not one thread in React Native. There's two threads for JavaScript. And so that, no, it's a misconception. A lot of native developers will say, well, how can you do all that work in one thread? It's like, well, they do have a separate thread, but don't get me wrong, not having threads is a pretty big problem in the world of performance if you're doing really complicated things. Or having to share a thread with a bunch of different things working. That's why in my Swift code, since we're going to have this conversation about threads, I might as well bring it up and explain it. In the Swift code that we have here that I'm writing, let's go into development pods, go to React Native and find my pod file here, and I'll show you what's going on and how I'm managing the threads as best as I can. I make something called a background queue right here. I dispatch a thread, a group of threads, because a queue is a group of threads called this. And any of my code runs on that background queue or that set of background threads. By doing that, I'm not in danger of screwing up the UI thread, which is needed. You want the UI thread to be as cool as a cucumber so that your UI is silky smooth and it never pauses, because that's what people complain about. What happens though is when anytime I'm done working with the database, I dispatch back out on the main thread the results of whatever I did. Whatever work I did, I'm going to give you back that work on the main thread. And by doing that, I'm guaranteed that React will pick up the changes in a timely manner. So threading is really important in this world of native land of programming and stuff. You can get away with it if you have a small app of not worrying about threads, but in the world of complicated apps, you're going to have to get into threading eventually. In React Native is no different. You should at least have a good understanding of how the threading is working, because otherwise you can't profile your app and figure out like what the heck's going on in the universe. So that's why that is there like that. So let's see here. We are going to say we need another text box, but we need a section, right? And so this is not going to work anymore because we had it really easy with the database form. Not going to work. I have a bunch of components to do this. And the one I'm trying to think of here that I want to use as an example, I don't remember how they all work. Let's go look at, I guess, the components. Let's go grocery shopping for a component here. Now, I think what I'm going to want is just the database config form, because the database config form should just get you a database, but it should not have an action associated with it. Yeah. So we're going to change database name action form to database, no, not config. There should just be a database form, database name form, right there it is. This is the one I want. All right, database name form, it is for $200, Alex. We need to change our import to say database name form and change this action out to be database name form. That's first thing. It's gonna be mad because I didn't change the, oh, I did, okay, close here. And like I said, it doesn't take an action, so it can't be doing that. So now I should have a something called a run action view. Yeah, this one right here. And so what this should do is take in, now there's two versions of this. There's an icon name in an updater, and then there's also one where you can send in your own icons. And that should be, it should be like, let's see here, this header toolbar view. Okay, so run action only allows you to run one function on the toolbar. But if you want to run a bunch of different functions, you can use this other toolbar called the header toolbar view, and you could pass in an array of different icons and functions, and it will just draw all those as toolbar items, and then it will go through and make it so you can run those. Because I'm super lazy, right? I don't like to have to write the same code over and over again. So if we look here, the example I'll give you is on database copy. Here, I have multiple buttons I want to be able to run in the header. So that's why I have the header toolbar view. And the toolbar means I have a toolbar over here of different buttons you can click. Where header run action view is more on the lines of the perform maintenance. Nope, that'd be it, because it's a header, it takes an icon, it takes a name, and then here's the run action, because all you can do is run an action, a single action. And so that's the header toolbar view, and right here. So that's what I kind of want. I want to be able to give me a database, and then you're going to give me under maintenance, well, not maintenance side, so it'll be scope. You're going to give me the name of the scope. And then based on that, I'll tell you whether or not I can get the scope back or not. Puppy, kittens, and rainbows here. All right. I'm going to have to make the create collection screen before I can actually show off scopes. I just realized that now. In the order of precedence, but we can still do this. All right. So we know that it's the header run action view that we really want. So let's, no, I don't really want that over there. Keep it up here. Let's minimize the project for right now and this, and make it so that I only have this so I can start grocery shopping here. So I want, I need an icon. Crap. I need an icon for scopes. Scopes are the file cabinet, if I remember right, in Capella. Where is my icon screen? Right here. Do I have a file cabinet? Let's look at what we have for files. File tray. Oh, that kind of works, but it's not. I'm using material community icons. They're the easiest to use. Oh, I do have file cabinet right there. Sweetness is my weakness. All right, cool. I do have file cabinet, so we can use that one. All right, I'm sorry, that's a bright background, but it's the only view side I know of. Header run action view, and we need to give it some stuff. We need to give it a name, which we're going to say scope. We're going to give it an icon name of file cabinet, and we're going to tell it to handle the update. And then it's mad because of prettier, so we're going to go right away and say reformat prettier, and then we're going to tell it to import. Show context, insert import magic sauce. Let's click the save button, and by theory, get scope. There is our new header box. Now, sad panda, because the fact that there's no text box to type into, we're going to fix that next, right? But the theory is we got our header that quickly, and live reload's working. Cool. So now we need a text field to get text from. And this is where React Native really does not shine, is that there's no theming support built into React Native, because once again, this is something that React is not designed to do. It's a rendering engine for nodes. It's not a component library. So like light and dark mode, you kind of got to roll that yourself, man. What? Yeah, I got this theme file that goes through and does the theme colors and stuff because it's not built in. Suck a butt? Yeah, it does. It's not great. Yeah, this kind of stinks. So I get the, I use the color scheme, which is a hook that goes through and gives me the color scheme based on the native device. And then you can see here, I modify the text view that they use, and that's for view and text, and this is a view. And by doing that, I can change the color of the text basically on the screen so it's properly there. I've got some styling to do this. That's how I handle it there. But for a text editor, which is different, I'm gonna go look at my database form. I don't remember the don't remember the import. Where do I get it from? Wait, I have to open the newest form. Text input from React Native. And then I think I have to set the color on it if I remember right. I think text input, and then I have to set style text input. Yeah, so I got to get both the style and color out of here. And then I need scheme to get the style. So it's like you're floating through a set of things here. So let's see here. We also need the placeholder color. So we need these three. So let's grab this over to get. We're gonna have to define those below state. Do I have scheme in here? Shoot, I don't have scheme either. Oh, I don't have scheme in here. Do I need scheme? Who's using scheme? Placeholder text uses scheme. Crap, I do need it. All right. Is this the right way to do this? Let me think about this for a second. I'm copy and pasting. Now, normally, if I'm going to change all the code, the copy and pasting feels natural. But if I'm not going to change the code, then the copy and pasting feels bad. What do I need for a text field? Let's talk about this for a second. I need what? For a text input, I need to know some stuff. Oh, it's a lot of properties. Think about writing a wrapper for this. It's a lot of properties to set though. I would have to have the set method, the default value, the placeholder text, some styling, I need something like this, basically. I think we're gonna do this, man. I think we gotta make our own text field. Text input. Called style text input. That is its own, basically, component. Because otherwise I'm gonna keep cut and paste this over and over again, and that just is feeling gross. Let's just grab this for example of a syntax. But now we need, well, this is not mono text, this is. All right, and we're gonna take the props, we're gonna say this is, but we need to get text input from React Native. Then we're gonna say text input. Why is this bad? Format prettier. That's pretty close to it, but we're gonna have to send in, well, the text prompts are wrong though, because we'd have to, text input takes different props. Extends text input based. Oh, good Lord. Oh, in React components, you're not supposed to extend things because it's functional programming. What are these called? Text input props. So we'd say it's text input props that we want, because then we can replace the ones we care about. So we would say, so we'll import those in, and then we'll say props, and we'll say style props. And I think we can just say that that's cool, but we don't want to have to send these in. We want to default this to what we have here. So we're gonna take and bring in some crap here because we want to make this so that we don't have to do all that work. That's the whole point of this. All right, so we want to be able to bring these in and now say database stamp form. We're going to say style is crop style plus we're going to say I need to merge basically what's passed in with what are we using here? We're getting text color from color. Nope. Okay, let's see here. That's the array finish. That's the finish for style. I think it's because the formatting's crap. All right. So I fixed the style, but we also got to fix the placeholder color here. I think we want to say need to merge. Where is it? Text input also. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be mad here because we had to merge those two together. Oh, it's styles. Text input, but now is it going to allow that? So we want to say this is the default. No. We'd want to say this is what we want. It needs to be in this order because we want to be able to say, I'll take mine in first. I'll set mine first. You can override it if you want. And then no matter what, we're going to say, take the final and say, look, text color we know is coming from the theme file. And we want to make sure that that's gets set. I don't think the font's needed, but we can try that and see if that works. So now we have our own input called text styled input instead of regular input. We should be able to go into our get form here and build a new type of text input. I'm going to copy this, bring it over to get, but we're going to change it. Instead of saying text, we're going to say styled text input. And then we need to first import that. And now we can say we don't need the style. We don't need to set the, I'll say auto caps none. Placeholder we're going to set to be scope name. We don't need to set that. We do need to set that to set scope name. And then this will be scope name. Should be scope text. Just so we can keep it unique. It's easier to read and understand what we're doing here. Default value would be scope name. That should do it. We should have, oh, let's go to reset. I need to reset the scope name. Set scope name equals to blank by default because we don't want a scope name. If they click the reset button on the top of the header, we want to be able to default that back to nothing. We got our result messages and we are getting 2 fields of getting information. We go back to our mobile app and this should have a scope name there. Perfect. We have database and scope name. I could say test1 here, and I could say underscore default, and then that would tell us, yeah, that font's bad. Bad juju. I should have known that not to keep the font in there. Let's get rid of that font. We do want the text color, but we don't need that. Let's go back here and take a look. That's better. That's much better. Okay. Now it won't do anything. That because we haven't told it to do anything yet. All right, so we can get rid of style input. Now we have that. We could probably go back in long term fix this to be styled input also. You know, I should probably do that. And then let's go here and then import that. And then we could take, we don't need the style anymore. We don't need the placeholder because we're doing that ourselves. And then we probably can get rid of text input up here. And now we have, I should probably go back and fix anything that is using a text input to use my new styled one, just to save me on some code. That doesn't use one. This does use a text input, so let's get rid of text input. That will be pissed off, and then I'll find out where it is using it. Say, and let's do a import, and then we can get rid of styled. Well, we're gonna have to keep that style because it looks like it's doing some special stuff there. We don't need the placeholder text. And we can get rid of this. We don't need it. We don't need a placeholder text. Cool. Save us some code. Let's see, is there anything we're not using? We're not using placeholder text anymore, so we can get rid of that. We do need text color though. We're not using scheme anymore. Cool. Hey man. Oh, that was used for, that's right, it's used for placeholder text. And then we can go up here and kill a couple imports. There we go. So I do like to do this now versus waiting, because if I wait to refactor this, I'm not going to remember to refactor it. Let's just be honest, right? Now I'm going to have two different things, and I made this styled text input so that I can not have to do this anymore. And so let's see here. We don't need this anymore. We don't need placeholder. The rest of that's cool. And then let's go find out things we're not using. We're not using this anymore. We're not using this or this. We don't need scheme anymore either. Let's go find our imports that aren't being used anymore. Look at this. We're cleaning up our code quite a bit. Getting that easier to read. That is the point of custom components, is to do this kind of things, to basically make your code easier to read. I like to say you're pushing the blame to somebody else. Let's start there and say this is a styled text input. We'll import from there. And then now let's see. We don't need that line. We don't need that line. We can go grocery shopping. We don't need this or this or this or this. And then we can get rid of these. Ooh, I do need that one though. I need that one. I'm using VI. If you're wondering, like, why am I doing weird things with the keyboard? That's why, because I like VI. Let's see here. We did that one. This one's probably using text input also. Nope, I already fixed database form. This one doesn't use one. I don't use the edit screen. These two I did not write. They're part of the default template. That doesn't use it. This is just views, if I remember right. We can just look at the imports at the top. This uses text only. Okay. Header view, no text input. This shouldn't have text input. This is just the navigation. This should not, because it's just text. This is a pull down list. That's the select I wrote, and then style text is the one that we just wrote. Our text is for text, not text input. That's it. Cool. We just refactored all of the components to use this new styled input versus that, saving ourselves some code imports and getting us a easy way to do styled inputs without having to worry about it. It was good. All right, let's go through the next job, which is we got to build a function to get a scope. So we should have somewhere in our services folder here a scope. It wants us to do a new file called get. And I'm just going to steal the syntax from here. Saves me if I have to type. I do need those two things. This will be get. We're going to take two things in, a database name, and we need to take in scope name. We'll type string, lowercase string, I guess. And then we're going to say let database equals that. That's cool. We're going to say database, and we need to get a scope. Get scope. And we need to get a scope name. Scope name. That's it. I never said database non-context, open the database first. That looks great for the error message. It's all cool. Reformat it prettier. I don't like that line being like that, but yeah. All right, if prettier says it's cool, it's cool. All right, so now we can just go back here and say that we want to import get. So we're gonna just take this out, and we're gonna say, instead of here, we're gonna say get. We're gonna set it three things in: the database name, and scope name. And we're gonna then tell it to automatically import in from our get. Oh boy. That probably was a bad function name. Everybody uses the word get. Whoops. Yikes. Well, hey, yeah, that's what it is. Found scope. And scope name. Cool. That should honestly get this thing working. Now, I don't have any custom scopes in my database, and I don't have the ability to add them in because I haven't written a screen for that yet. So the other way to test this puppy is to test with underscore default, which we already have a screen for, but it should work the same way. So I should be able to say get scope, test one, default. I didn't open the test database. Database is open, test one. Open a database. Thank you. Open sesame. Go into here. Go to scope. Test one. Underscore default. No. Cannot read property of name undefined. Yikes. Whoa, Scooby Snacks here. Let's find out what's going on there, man. That's not cool. Dismiss. Retry. Database should still be open. So let's go through and use our debugging tools. So we'll shake. We'll tell it to open the JavaScript debuggers. We'll clear the console. Clear console window. That's what's going on here. Go to source. Find our code here. We want to go into our app. Find our Expo example. Go into our. We're probably going to want to go into the service, into this get call. Figure out what's going on here. See what's returning. But also on our screen, so if we go back to our app, go into our collections, scope, and get, we also can debug this code here. So let's just go find out what's happening here and make sure we're sending it the right values. That's an important thing here, right? So here we go. We're gonna have the debugger over here and this over here. We should have a pretty good idea what's going on. This, I have to say, is a pretty decent experience of debugging. When somebody asks me, should you use React Native or Flutter or any other framework, I always look at, can I debug it? Can I use a breakpoint? Can I go through it? Am I debugging with a good experience, or am I writing log statements somewhere? If I'm writing log statements somewhere, it's a terrible framework. Don't use it. If I can put some breakpoints in and see what's going on in memory, that's already good. And if it's stable and it constantly works the same way, then better. So what's going on here? All right, so let's see here. We've got a database in memory. Databases is a collection of databases, and that seems like it's right. Now, of course, this has given us different closures of scope, right? So because we have a function, an arrow function here, and you can see here, the minute we go into try, for example, we're going to go into a local scope of that try. And that's going to be different than the global scope of what's going on here. So every single time in JavaScript or TypeScript, you put a little squiggly bracket in, you're changing your scope. And I'm not talking about the scope variable. I'm talking about the variable scope of how long a variable lives in memory. Database name is set to test1, and this is set to underscore default. Both these are correct. And then this should be, databases should be coming from context. And it should have a bunch of values inside of it, hopefully. So we're coming here. What I wanted to do is make sure we're pulling the values from state right. So those are definitely pulling from state right. So if that's true, we should be able to hit continue. So I'm going to hit take this breakpoint out, delete it, or just delete it altogether because I know that that's working. Hit my play button. Oh, it's not saying that database is not in context, so I go open it first. Okay. Go back here, go to get scope, test 1, and then underscore default. We tested my error messages and make sure that those are working, right? Now let's go in here. All right, so it's here. What do we get for scope? Undefined. Well, oh, we caught an exception here. Why are we not catching? Because I'm not doing a try catch here. That's why. Duh. Yeah, okay, so let's add a try catch in there. So that's what's going on. We're getting an exception. Let's find out what the exception is. The only way to do that is modify our code to do that, right? So let's dismiss this. That's bad code on my part on the front end here. I should have in my function here call a try catch. And we should say this should be in here. It should be in a try. Oop. Error. Throw. Error. Actually, we can just throw error. But wait a minute. If we're doing the try catch here, we don't need to do it here. We should be doing this in our... This is stupid. There's nothing I could do. So you should never be doing a try catch if there's nothing you can do with it. If you're just rethrowing it, you're wasting your time. Don't do it there. So why in my UI code am I not doing a try catch here? I am doing a try catch here. The catch is the error is not bubbling up. Interesting. So we do have to do a try catch here. Oh, because it's the difference between promise and not catch. Okay. So we have happy pass. We're returning. We're throwing an error. We're throwing an error here. So we got 3 throws. This should work. And we should now at least get an idea of why we're breaking. So let's go back to database open, test 1. Put that database. That's cool. Go into the collections, get scope, test 1, underscore default. What are we getting? Oh, is the debugger open somewhere? Yes. Chrome is freaking out. That's not good. Device, shake your love. Tell it to open the JavaScript debugger again. Here, clear console. We know we got problems. Trying to figure that out. Here's our breakpoint. We want to get a scope and figure out what the error is. Put breakpoint here because we know we're getting some kind of error. Shoot. I'm gonna have to reopen it because it's freaking out. And reconnect that tool. Source back to here. We should have the same file open. Cool. Database. Test 1 here. Boom. There. That's cool. Go to collection. Go to get scope. Test 1. Let's go default. What are we getting for our error? Database name. It's test 1. We've got our database. We're going to try to open with underscore default. Continue. But we're... Try again. Can't figure out why my exception's not throwing here. So what do we got back for scope? Scope is undefined. But we didn't throw an exception. Okay, so it's not here. So we're gonna have to look back at our library code. See if we can figure out what's going on here. So let's go to get scope. And we probably got a problem here. And let's go ahead and tell it to continue. Open database, test one, debug closer to the sun, get scope, test one. I should make a button up here that you can just click and it'll do like a default because then I don't have to type. I'm really lazy like that. What? Wait, how is that not? Scope get scope. How's this not? Well, that's obviously, if we're not hitting a breakpoint here, that's a problem. Database should call get scope. Should call this function. Collection get scope test one default. Okay, now it's firing at least. Let's go ahead and click continue. And I'm not getting anything for the promise breakpoints. Oh, that's frustrating as turd. I don't have to put log statements in here. Why are these not firing? I've got other of these and they've worked. Where, you know, if the function comes back wrong, is this because of threading where a promise is running and then it can't, the debugger can't jump on the thread? Curious. Let's see what. Well, let's open a database and see what Swift is seeing. If you want to see the full experience, let's do that. Let's open up Xcode. Teach you the full debugging experience for a mobile app. All right, so we're in here. We got an Expo. So the first thing is we have to know we're running on the iPhone 15 Pro. That's really important. So now this app code is the same as the code that's been published here. Because of that, we can go to debug, and then we can say attach to process, and it will know that phone app's already running right here. So I can do that. It's going to take a few seconds, and it will pause your UI. But eventually, it should hopefully come up. And once the debugger comes up, you can see here it says attaching the phone. It does take, like I said, a few seconds. The hopes is once that happens, we're good. We can bring it up here, and we should get a message here. Or we should start be able to see messages here. So we're running. But you see here running on it, which means now we're there. Now we could test this theory by going into our app here, going into database, and turning on the console log. So I'm going to say I want for everything, I want debug, not verbose. That's like drinking through a fire hose. Let's go debug. Okay. So that should have came back with a message if the debugger was running saying that Xcode was what version of, it should tell us what version of Couchbase Lite we're running. I don't think this is working right. All right, let's kill the app and restart it, see what happens. Kill the app, start the app, clean. Attach the debugger again. See if we can get some messages now. Run it. Okay, it's running now. So now let's go in and try it again. Console, turn on the log, all logging, debug level. Okay, that's what we should have saw before. So little jank here. It doesn't seem like the debugger is always attaching properly. So if I go to open database test one, here, boom, cool. We can see our database open. Very, very cool. All right. Now what we should be able to do is go back to scope here, get scope, test one, underscore default. And we can see different messages coming from React Native. You can see here, this is a text input. React input system client is telling us that it's doing something with the keyboard. Yeah, because I think I told the keyboard not to capitalize letters. And so I think that's an informational message based on that. Now we need to go in and add a breakpoint into our framework here to figure out what the hell's going on here. So get scope, let's go here and say, we want to see what the hell is going on. So we're going to just put this right here and see what we're getting and make sure that Swift is returning what we think we should be returning. And we can debug from this side. We're not even getting here. Oh, that's get default. We don't want to get default. We want get scope. Wow, I was about to get depressed here. Try again. Okay. New database and memory. Recover from our crash. Cool beans. Back over to collection. Test one. Underscore default. What? Okay, now that time I am on the right method. Get scope with scope name with resolve or rejector. And that's even in the thread. What is going on here? We're getting an undefined. I can't fire any breakpoints in this code. And I'm also not getting a breakpoint in JavaScript. It's obviously not calling it. So why would it not call it? Let's take a look at that code real quick here. Get says database awaits scope. So the only way this would happen is if database Connect DevTools, clear history, console, source. Let's go here, go into here, go to database, and see if we're even calling it here. Default scope. Let's see what we're getting back here. Xcode Simulator is not hitting the Swift code, which is a bad sign. I have something going wrong somewhere in the mapping of code. Test one. Okay. Name. What are we pulling in for name? Scope name is that, and default database name would be test one. So it knows its name is from this database name, and it knows scope name is default. Okay, coolio. Continue. Here's what's going on. This is where it is. In database, we return undefined if there's an error. Instead of returning the error, we're swallowing the error. This is where undefined is coming from. That's not going to help the average developer now, is it? We got to not return undefined. We should throw the error. We should rethrow this error so that the user can see it in database. I'll have to do a new build for that, but it's got to be done, man. Because otherwise, this is going to happen, right? You're going to be a customer. You're going to go in here, do the exact same thing I'm doing. You're going to get a bomb, but you're going to get it undefined without understanding, like, what went wrong. If you don't know what's wrong, you can't fix it. So let's see what's really going on. What is the error pissed off about? Continue. Here we go. What is our error? What is error being set to? Error cannot be undefined, right? I mean, if you're catching an error, it's got to be something. Type error. Okay, well that's okay. That means we have some kind of TypeScript problem here. Right here we're saying type error. React Native scope get scope is not a function. It is undefined. It's saying that I can't find the method for scope get scope. Well, okay. Okay, that's weird. Why would that be happening? Is our question today. So let's go look at our source for here. Scope get default. Cancel. So this is an interface method from here. And it's right here. But it's saying it can't find this. But it can find get default. And this is definitely an interface because you see the interface right here, and then you can go to the definition here, right? So that's all icon stands for interface. So we're defining it here, which is all database sees, and then it looks for the implementation here, but it's saying that this is not defined. That is not true. And it should be the same name here, get scope. I mean, shit, we can do this real quick. This will not help, but because the ID is already seeing it, we could do this, but that ain't gonna make a difference to the price of tea in China because it should not make a difference at all. All right, let's do another build, I guess. It's almost like the bits are somehow broken. Terminal, which we've had that problem before, today even. Go back here, npm run clean, npm run build. We got Bob out. Bob, the builder, please build. Bob, come on, Bobby, help us out. Bob has built and no errors. Okay, npm run pre-build clean. So obviously we got some crap going on here. Something's wrong in the world of Denmark. I don't know what's going on, but there's something wrong. So we got to figure out what's going on here. So I'm going to do a pre-build clean, and then I'll do a build, a pre-build, or a run iOS, and that will do a build. That'll build the JavaScript stuff. And we'll see if it's still saying it can't find the function. It's saying the function's undefined, but here's the weird thing. It shouldn't build at all. Because if the function was not defined, the interface would not be met. And if the interface contract would not met, TypeScript shouldn't allow you to compile at all, because TypeScript's compiler should say, hey, I got an interface here. You're saying you're going to implement it, and you're not implementing it because you're missing this function. And that should be up here in the world of TypeScript. Right? If we go to TypeScript here, we are saying implements iCore Engine. This class here implements this. So that means every function that is on iCore Engine must be implemented by this. Now, there's only one other way that can happen, and is that if this is defined twice, but we should get a different TypeScript error if this is defined twice, right? We'd get a function already defined. Because TypeScript does not do method overloading the right way. So let's see here. One. Yeah, we only have two get scopes. We have a get scope and get scopes. Plural. Okay, so that's not it either. And I know that wouldn't be it because TypeScript shouldn't compile then. All right. iOS. see what happens. Let's see if this build will fix it. And then I think after this, I do have to run because I've got some personal things I gotta do tonight. And I'm guessing my wife will start texting me in about 15 minutes saying, "Are you done yet? We're supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z." And I'll be like, "Yep, I know. You told me twice." So we'll see what happens when we compile these. I want to thank everybody for watching the stream, either live or on video on demand, which a lot of you seem to do. I do know that some people on the video on demand YouTube conversation are coming from India. And I know that I've got a bunch of people that I work with in India that watch the streams. So I do know that that's maybe why my YouTube numbers are decent in on video on demand, because I usually stream when people in India are sleeping. They should be sleeping, right? It's very late there. So I would not want you to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning watching my stream. That's a waste of your time. I like me. I think my streams are okay. They're not great, but they're not bad. But definitely not worth sacrificing sleep over. No stream is worth that. Okay. There we go. Let's go back here. If we get default scope, this should work. It did. Let's see what happens this time. Same thing. Cannot read undefined. Kind of hoping that it would just be like a cache problem like last time, but it's not. So get scope, test one. Okay, so anything's coming up with the undefined. So it's not even running the code right. All right, well, let's see here. We know get's default scope's working. Let's breakpoint this a little bit more and see if we can figure out where I made my mistake. So we want to debug engine get scope. Because if we get this far, we know we're making it here. So let's do this. We're going to put a breakpoint here. And there. We don't even need that there. We're also going to put a breakpoint in the engine itself to see whether or not this is firing. So this should happen. And so if this is not firing at all, then we know that's where the problem is. We want this at least to fire, and we want this and this to fire, obviously. Oh, I think I know where the problem is. Light bulb moment. Light bulb moment. I think I know what the problem is. Poop. This, I think I'm barking up the wrong tree, but let me confirm that. If these fire and I get here and then we're still getting it, I know where the problem is. Okay, where am I right now? I'm in the engine. All right, so I'm in the engine and I'm trying to call this code right here, right? So let's get Xcode close. Let's open Xcode up and see if we can put a breakpoint in there. And I think I'll know what's going on here. I think I can explain why. I've been fighting this for quite a while. Old versus new. And we want scope, and we might get scope right here. And we just want to put a breakpoint here. We also need to attach the debugger now, don't we? Attach debugger. This will take a second, but then once it attaches, attaching, we should attach. It's running the debugger. Okay, cool. Let's go back here. go back to our debugger here, and why is our debugger not? Oh, there it is. Nope, there it is. Okay. All right, so we've got this. We're gonna go ahead and click continue. And we're returning undefined. But the error is this. It's wrong. It's telling you that the method's not defined, the function's not defined, but it's wrong. It's actually telling us that the Swift function's not defined. What? How is that possible, right? Oh, it's possible. It's very, very much possible. All right. So scope get scope has to map to a Swift function of the same name called scope underscore get scope, and it has to be defined by the React Native plugin, whatever is registered for that. I was telling you earlier, this gets a little crazy because of the Swift magic. So I can close this all out because I know where the problem is now. I have an idea where the problem is. Is this going to require probably some Swift code changes? Is my guess. Make sure I don't have that running anywhere. Okay, it's not running anywhere. Perfect. And here we're going to close this out because this is not our problem. I want to make sure if I make the Swift code changes that I don't blow myself up. Okay, here is the how does Swift native or how do React Native modules work? All right, let me describe it. There is a bridge interface here. Okay, the bridge basically just says this code in here is going to make a bridge between JavaScript and native iOS. And out of the box, it's Object-C, but you can do Swift. However, if you're going to do that, you realize that, well, one, the native module, this file name has to be the same as these two file names right here. See how it's CBL React Native? Okay, it's going to look for this module right here. Okay, and this is going to be where we define, one, the name of the interface, and this is the name of the same side that we were doing in JavaScript. These all have to match. So CBL React Native is what we're calling over on the other side in JavaScript, right? These are the Object-C version of the function names. And then the function names have to map into Swift. So what that's telling me is that the function name here is wrong. So we got to go to scope right here. So we have a function called collection, and there it is. There it is, folks. There it is. Son of a beeswax. It's the wrong name. It's not collection, it's scope. I cut and pasted. TBD Gamer told me if you cut and paste, it's probably bad. He said, Aaron, don't do that because you should understand what you're doing. And here's an example where I cut and pasted. Womp, womp, womp. And it killed me. And it cost me a half-hour debugging because I couldn't figure out what's going wrong. And it turns out the entire time the method name wrong was in the definition of the Object-C method name. So how does this magic work? Let me finish explaining this. So in here we make a external, this is something called a macro. And the macro is like some, you call this and then when it compiles, it's gonna generate some code for you. Okay, that's what a macro does, right? So in here we have this macro called scope get scope. We're taking a couple object names and this is all Object-C. So if you don't understand that, that's perfectly okay. Most people don't. This is the name of the function, but it turns out the name of the function in Object-C is also all the variable names. So what you have is this is the beginning of the function name. This is the parameter passed in. This is the next part of the function name, okay? And this is the next problem. This should be like that, which is another typo, because this defines the next part of the function name. This is the parameter. This is the next part of the function name. This is the parameter. And this is the next part of the function name. So the full function name of this is scope underscore get scope with scope name, with resolver, with rejector. That's the name of the function. If your mind is like going, what? How? Yes, you're not wrong. You're not wrong to be upset about that. That's Object-C and how it works. So we have multiple typos. One, scope name should have had a colon after it. And then two, this said collection instead of scope name. Now, this must match a Swift function definition in Swift. So if we go over to CBL React Native, we have to find this right here, this get scope, and this function name must match. If this does not match, we're screwed. And there's our second problem. It needs to be scope get scope with scope name. And that's what it's not here, right? It's sent to get default. So this needs to be wrong. This is wrong. It should be this. It should be scope get scope with scope name with resolver with rejector. That is the name of the function that we're mapping in. And object C is now mad. Why is it mad? Get scope with scope name with resolver with rejector. Name is the default variable, so we shouldn't need that. Scope get scope with scope name with resolver with rejector. Why is it mad? Oh, we're not passing in scope. Wait, what? Let's get scope. What? I didn't finish this code. This code is... Oh no, did I revert the code by accident when I remember one of those times when I had Xcode open and then I built? Oh shoot. I bet you this is what's going on here. I've got some Xcode badness because of that. Yeah, take a look here. I have get scope here. This is get default. Oh no, this is get default, not get scope. Oh shoot. Oh boy. All right, we can fix this. This is why you should close Xcode before you do a build in React Native because of this crap. This should be get default. Now, the weird part is that this should have been failing all along in Xcode because you can't have two functions with the same name. Oh, you can because they have different arguments. Shit, method overloading. Cuck-a-butt. That's our problem. All right, let's see here. Let's take a look here now. Is this right? Scope, get scope, with scope name, with resolver, with rejector. Okay, this part's right. This is 100% right. All right. Double check here. That is right. All right. Close Xcode before we do a build. Tell Bob we should do a clean. We're telling Bob to do a clean and then a build because we are not screwing around anymore. This obviously caused us some pretty big headaches for at least me. And I'm not sure if it was all that entertaining watching me debug, but let's clean. We'll clean this, we'll build, and hopefully the magic should work. And I will now remember the close Xcode before you build because I said, hey, it could do crazy things. Like if you didn't save your files, it's going to delete what you just did because you didn't save your files. It could corrupt your files. It could do a bunch of bad things because it's going to regenerate the entire code again based on your pod file. And so yes, when you do this, do not have Xcode open. Extremely bad and negative things will happen to you. I mean, like the world ain't gonna end because I obviously found the bug and fixed it. But pretty sure I wrote that code right the first time. My guess is either I didn't save it, and so when I did a build, it basically just reverted to whatever I last saved. I mean, some file corruption could have happened. A couple different things could have happened, I guess. But either way, that's wrong. I mean, the default method was set to the wrong name, but default was working when I debugged. I checked that. So there is some kind of caching / build thing going on because that also would have stopped working then because the name wasn't right. So JavaScript didn't throw an exception because JavaScript wasn't the problem. It was really the React bindings with Object-C that was the fault. I still feel like the try catch should have worked. We'll try with a fake scope name, and we should get an exception back from there that breaks in the proper point where our code should see it, not an undefined error. We should get the proper error message. I've done this. Oh, excuse me. Getting tired. I've done this on other screens, and it's been fine. Like in database, I tested the turd out of that, making sure like if I put around database name and stuff that the exceptions were flowing through and it was working. I mean, all this is just patterns I've created, right? Once you create one screen, you have a pattern. You're just doing the same thing on other screens. Um, oh, let's see here. I'm gonna go crazy here. I'm not even gonna put a breakpoint in. I'm gonna make the assumption that this whole thing works, and that was the problem. I found it. Cool. That was it. Let's try this though. Let's try 42. Test 42. Oh, we should not be getting this though. We should get a good clean error. It's not catching it. So I still think database is wrong. Database should throw an exception, not return undefined. I am going to make a breaking change to fix this, and I'll have to merge it back into Ionic because it is a breaking change. I do not agree with my original code here. I wrote the database. Well, I may have not wrote this actually. No, I wrote this. If this is get scope, I wrote it because I wrote all the scope implementation. This should throw error here, not return it. I hate doing that, but I hate rethrowing errors, but we gotta rethrow that, man. Something went wrong. We gotta bubble. We can't eat it. You cannot eat this, man. Because it's just gonna be frustrating to developers. So right now, that was what I call eating the exception. You're never letting the developer know what really truly happened. That's bad. Let's go through and do. I know this is gonna suck to say, but I'm gonna have to do another build because I changed the implementation here. So I have to go back here, do a npm run build. Tell Bob to build. Expo example. I didn't change any Swift code, so I think I can get away without a clean. I can just do an npm pre-build. Uh-oh. There we go. Since I only changed JavaScript code, I don't feel like I have to do a clean. npm run iOS. By theory, this should now throw that error and we should get proper result message back. And this is the proper developer experience that should be there. And I should check this to make sure that's not happening in any place else, that I'm not just eating the error because that's bad. I don't think so because I look here, that does scopes. That does scopes. I don't see a try catch in here and the other places in here. I mean, I could just search for try. And what's, oh, there's only one try catch in the whole thing. So, okay. Okay. Well, I'm semi-confident then that should hopefully be fixed here. Oop, test one, new database, go back here, go back to collection, get scope, test one, 1, 2, 5, blah, blah. There we go. That's it. That was bubbling up our error message. So now if we do a default spell right, Aaron. Found it. I can clear it. Try again. State's working. Cool. Coolio. Oh, we could do this too before we go. Let's do a shake. Shake your love. Thank you, Deborah Gibson. I think she doesn't like that anymore. Toggle performance. We could take a look at our memory usage. Boom. We should be able to add test one and underscore default. Our memory usage shouldn't really go up all that much. Here's our JavaScript. Here's our views. This is all cool. We found it. UI, both the UI thread and the JavaScript thread are solid. They're not doing a huge amount. This means my performance is pretty good. This is something you care about. And then if you want, if you have to go into really great detail, let's toggle performance monitor back off. And we could do this. We can go into Xcode. Anytime I show this feature off, people are just like, what? In the world of React Native especially, let's go to the debugger, attach process, attach this process. This will take a few seconds while it attaches. We want to bring this guy up here because we're going to do some magic here. All right. React Native, boy, it's so in React Native maps to UIKit. Okay, UIKit is a framework that's in iOS. Right. iOS's UIKit uses constraints, and that's how it tries to figure out like what should be where on the screen. Like how much should this text grow? And if you have, I'll give you an example of a constraint right here. Right here, how much space is between these two, this icon and this we would call UI label, but it's just called a text in React, right? So there'd be a constraint that says how many pixels over should this icon be from the edge of the screen, the start of the screen, right? Then there'd be another constraint that says, or there'd have to be a compression and hugging definition that says how much space should be between these two things. Now you would have some kind of spacer in between here that puts space between this and the next available thing. These are all the constraint system that we normally do in UIKit. Now, constraints are designed in a way that the UI can grow and shrink depending on screen size, because there's many different sizes of iPhone. You could be on a tablet, right? It should be there. Now, where this gets interesting is you don't always want to have the full weight of a view. Okay, a view is the most core basic thing. It's called a UI view in iOS. They're heavy. They have things like background colors. They have all kind of things. Sometimes you just want something that you can arrange your components or anything that inherits from a UI view. Sometimes we want to have something that can arrange those, but only runs constraints and doesn't have like a paint method. It doesn't have a background color, because that's super expensive, because anytime you have to try to render, you have to tell all the subcomponents underneath it to also render. They have to all run their paint method. That takes forever, right? So if you say, for example, I just want to arrange these things, but I don't care about background color stuff, well, we have something. It's called UI stack view. UI stack view basically allows us to arrange components together in a certain order, and it will put space and stuff between them. You can put constraints and stuff like that between it. However, there's no paint draw because it's not a view-based component. And so because that's designed just for arranging things on a screen. Now, in the world of React Native, that does not exist. You're using views for everything, which is using UI views, which means you can get view heavy, where you basically have too many containers. Your view is really slow. You're trying to figure out what's going on here. So Xcode gives you the ability to see this stuff in real time, man. You go into Xcode, turn on debugger, click this little button here. What should happen is we should get it rendered in both 2 and 3D. If you want, you can just swap between 2 and 3D here. And what this will do is this will give you the entire view hierarchy of what's going on. Now, it's not cool in 2D, but in 3D view, let me tell you, it's pretty badass awesome. This is a 3D view of every single rendering view that's happening in the UI there as it draws up and draws down. This is one of the coolest features inside of Xcode. I use this all the time for debugging, trying to figure out, do I have too many containers? These are constraints buttons here that can show you your different things going on with that. But you can see here, I have a view, my view, basically data right here, that default, that is the results that came back, right? Or no, excuse me, that's the text field, right? Then you can see the rest of these are down here and all rendered together. So you know, even like in the render path, what rendered top is probably the last thing that rendered. And it's pretty cool. You can see all different things. You can see here like the icon is rendering separately. So the icon's rendering first and then the label, and here also. And so what this allows you to do though quickly is to see how many views you have. Because if this is huge, like if you have like 1,000 views on here, you're gonna have performance problems, right? And this is where you may need to flatten your views, we call it, your view tree, and figure out a way to basically use like Flexbox to basically put a bunch of things that you're normally just like throwing together separately. And Flexbox doesn't exist in React Native in the same way, but there is, they converted it so you could do the same kind of things with style sheets in Flexbox as you would in DOM, and it kind of works in React Native. It builds constraints basically. So that's cool and that's needed. I use this always to validate I'm not doing anything dangerous, right? Because I care about my performance. The thing is, you want to do this early on so that you're not killing yourself. You don't want to wait to the end of the app and then all of a sudden you have like 1,000 performance problems. You'll spend weeks trying to fix all those. Fix as you go. Do feature-based development. My feature is get this scope out, this view out. Well, then I need to validate that the full thing works. Turnkey. I should be able to ship this to production. No performance problems. It's working exactly as it has. The error catching's working. I should be able to test this a little bit. I should be able to say, hey, look, if you want this in production, you can have it. Don't bottle up all your stuff and do it at the end because it sucks. It's the worst, especially on big apps. But anyways, this is pretty cool. So this is a cool thing I like to do in Xcode. But mostly I'm there for the memory usage and to understand the CPU usage and those kind of things. When I use this, it should be like 0. I mean, it should be super fast. Let me go ahead and. Oop, sorry, I'm breakpointing here, aren't I? Yeah, I'm paused. I need to continue. All right. Because when you do that, it pauses the app so they can get the render tree, right? But if I do this, I do a run on this. Test 1, underscore key font. This should cost me no CPU whatsoever. It should be like next to nothing. I mean, literally, the call to database, it's a blip. I'm calling on the background thread, and really, Couchbase Lite is really efficient, super efficient. So it is some of the most efficient code I've ever seen. So I'd have to say that is definitely, most of the time, unless you're calling a massive amount of documents out of the database, your performance is going to be like this, next to 0. So it's pretty cool. A very efficient mobile database. It's Couchbase. That's why I work here. I work at Couchbase because it's a cool company to work for, and the things we have are awesome. All right, folks, I think I'm gonna end the stream here, man. TBD Gamer, Nick, everybody else that showed up today for hanging out. And if you're watching video on demand, thank you for watching my videos on demand. Check out TDB Gamer on Twitch. He streams all the time, and he's been doing several different apps. I've watched him in the past. He's pretty much a pretty cool person to hang out with. Check my channel for Discord. There's a couple places I hang out in Discord. A bunch of cool programmers hang out there also. So if you're looking for help or you just want to hang out and talk with fellow like-minded people, that's cool. There is also an iOS meetup this weekend, I do believe, on the iOS, what is it called? It's the monthly meetup, but I can never remember what the heck it's called. Twitter. OS Dev. Not weekly dev. I'll have to find and post a link to it on Twitter, but there is a iOS meetup for iOS developers this weekend, I believe. It's a group of people. Nick hangs out over there quite a bit on the Dev Club. iOS Dev Club, I think it's called. iOS Dev Club. Yeah. So there is a iOS Dev Club virtual meetup this weekend on Zoom. So if I will probably be attending, I'm hoping. So if you're hanging out, also I'll be there. So appreciate everybody for hanging out with me on Video on Demand or whatever. And I'll probably be back tomorrow working on the same app. We'll get the rest of the collection UI working. And then we'll move on to documents after that. Crazy and exciting stuff here going on. So appreciate your time. Take care. Have a good one.